Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sports Ballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Sports Ballers podcast. My name is Eric. I will be hosting this week. I am joined by Cory and Evan as always. We've got a pretty significant topic scheduled today, a little list of topics, a lot of wide-ranging sports. We got more Tour de France stuff, which, only happens every, 3 weeks long? Is that how long the race is?
It's a 3-week long race.
So 3 weeks out of the year, we talk a little bit of cycling, Cory talks cycling, and we pretend like we are listening, even though we don't know what the hell he's talking about half the time. But we try our best. But for now, we'll start with the NBA. Got the NBA Finals going on. The Bucks took a 3-2 lead over the Suns on Saturday night. The first team to win a road game in this series as they managed to go to Phoenix. And they took a pretty big haymaker in the first quarter from the Suns. They were up, I believe, 37-21 at the end of the first, or at least late in the first, from what I just based off of my memory. And then the Bucks responded really nicely. They came back and had the game tied and eventually took a slight lead going into the half. And then it was pretty much a dogfight from then. The Bucks jumped out to a decent lead in the third quarter and kind of maintained a steady lead until late in the game when the Suns made a last push. They got the score down to 1 point, and then Devin Booker had the ball. He had been hot all night, and he had an opportunity to potentially give the Suns the lead with less than a minute left in the game. And he dribbles into traffic and gets stripped by Drew Holiday. Holiday takes it the other way. Giannis goes sprinting down the floor, and Holiday hits Giannis for an alley-oop, and Chris Paul decided to punch him in the crotch because that's what Chris Paul does because he's a dirty player. And it was an and one. Giannis missed the free throw, but he tapped the ball back out. Somebody else got fouled. I think Chris Middleton.
Literally 2 minutes.
Yeah,
and we're frozen.
Apparently Evan is frozen already. But we can still hear him. I don't know if he can hear us.
He cannot hear us, so I will get that working. You keep going.
Okay. And then, so the rest is history. Chris Middleton made 2 free throws that pretty much iced the game from there. And the Bucks pulled off a nice road upset win, and they have a chance to close out the championship tomorrow night. It's been a hell of a series. I mean, this has been the best played as far as like back and forth quality of games. Finals that I've seen probably since, I would say, 2013 when the Spurs lost to the Heat. That was the classic Ray Allen shot that he hit to tie the game, and all the Heat fans got locked out of the building because they left early, and they were trying to get back in when the Heat forced overtime, and that was hilarious. But that was a great series, and this has been just an excellent series. I really don't know what chance the Suns have because the Bucks have been really tough to beat at home. And it seems like the Bucks have, I kind of mentioned this a little bit last week, that it seems like the Bucks have sort of figured some things out too. Like, it's not just, oh, the Suns have better players and they're going to win. The Suns have some weaknesses that the Bucks could exploit, and they've continued to do that. Giannis has been unstoppable. Chris Middleton has actually strung together back-to-back good games. And, you've got talking heads on TV saying, well, Chris Middleton deserves Finals MVP consideration, and I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we doing this? We didn't do this for anybody else when the guy that leads the entire series in points, assists, rebounds, block shots, and steals is Giannis Antetokounmpo. How is he not the Finals MVP at this point? It's a ridiculous talking point, but there seems to be some pushback on the idea that Giannis is actually good. Like, it just seems like the media doesn't want to give him his due because he's a little bit unconventional. He's not necessarily the guy that you just give the ball to and say, hey, go get a bucket, because he's not a great shooter. But he does literally everything else at the highest level possible. The only things he doesn't do is he doesn't really shoot, and he doesn't make his free throws. So, I mean...
Well, and that's the thing. So I actually caught most of the second half of Game 5, and that was the first action of the NBA Finals that I've caught other than replays. And during that stretch, for somebody who maybe would, have a significant recency bias to their thought process of who should be and who shouldn't be the Finals MVP, I could see where you might make that argument, because Chris Middleton had a great second half, and in particular fourth quarter of that game, whereas Giannis missed all of his free throws. Basically, like, that's basically what Giannis contributed to the game as far as noteworthy things where the announcers were actually talking about him. He was at the free throw line missing free throws. And so from that standpoint, I could see it. But it's not like Giannis wasn't, was just terrible during that time. It's just that when the spotlight was on him, none of the other 9 players on the floor are in action. He's the only one with the ball who's actually doing anything. He was missing his shots. And so from that standpoint, you can see where somebody would look at that in a vacuum and be like, oh yeah, Chris Middleton is the MVP. In fact, I could even see where somebody in a vacuum would say Drew Holiday is the MVP over Giannis, based purely on that recency bias.
Based purely on watching 1/4 of one game, so 1/20th of the series, 5%.
And I'm not saying that it's right to have that extreme level of recency bias, because it's not.
No, you're dumb if you have that take. And if you want to talk about who's made the biggest plays, well, last I checked, the game was decided because Giannis threw down an alley-oop. So he was on the receiving end of the deciding play of Game 5, and he made the best play of the last 5 years that I've ever seen in the playoffs with that block of DeAndre Ayton on that alley-oop. Like, that was something that there was one guy in the world that could have made that play, and it was Giannis. Joel Embiid doesn't make that play. LeBron James doesn't make that play. Giannis is the only guy on the planet that could have made that play, and he made it at the biggest time of the game. So, if we want to talk clutch, he's been there in the clutch, just not necessarily the conventional ways like hitting shots and making free throws. But Shaquille O'Neal couldn't make his free throws either. Nobody was saying, let's give Kobe the Finals MVP, even though Shaq was decisively the better player in all 3 of those championship runs. So it just feels like people are looking for a reason to tear this guy down.
Yeah, I think all the talk about Giannis not being the MVP, I think it's just people trying to be too cute or trying to get too galaxy brain or something. Like, sometimes the simplest answer is the correct answer. Just take the low-hanging fruit because it's so obvious.
Yeah,
like, he's the best guy.
It's the stupidity like this is how you end up with Andre Iguodala winning Finals MVP over Steph Curry in 2015, where instead of just saying, oh, hey, who's been the best player on the winning team, let's give him the Finals MVP, they say, hey, well, the series kind of turned around when this guy started guarding this guy, so even though he's clearly not as good, not as valuable as the best player on the team, let's give him the award because there's a narrative involved. No, these awards matter when people talk about who are the greatest players of all time. And Steph Curry gets knocked to this day for not having won a Finals MVP, even though he should have won it in 2015. And I'm not going to let a bunch of idiots talk themselves into giving Chris Middleton, who is by no means a Hall of Fame level player, a Finals MVP award that he absolutely does not deserve. And I don't understand this idea of, oh, well, he gets clutch and he was huge in Game 3 and 4 and 5 and all that stuff. Well, he was terrible in Games 1 and 2. You get knocked for losing, too. When you cost your team games because you stink, you don't get to say, oh, well, I was huge in all the games we won. Well, you're the reason why you didn't win all of them. So you can't be the MVP when you're costing your team games. That's just not how it works.
I get Chris Middleton confused with Kate Middleton. That's how relevant Chris Middleton is. No idea who this guy is.
He's been an all-star at least twice, but yeah, he's a good player. I'm not even knocking Chris Middleton, but he's not Giannis. Giannis has won 2 MVP awards. He's one of the 5 best players in the NBA. He is decisively the best player in this series, and that's the only reason why the Bucks have a chance to win the championship on Tuesday is because they have the best player in the series. Because 2 through 15 or whatever it is after that of players that are actually seeing time decisively favors the Suns. Like, I would take Chris Paul and Devin Booker both over Chris Middleton. I would certainly take both over Drew Holiday. I would take DeAndre Ayton on whoever the Suns or the Bucks' next best guy is. It's not even close. And then you got Cam Johnson, Cam Payne, Jay Crowder. The list goes on and on down the stretch for these guys in the rotation. Bucks are at a severe disadvantage except for at one spot, and that's Giannis versus whoever you decide is the Suns' best player. He's the reason why they're probably going to win the title and probably going to do it tomorrow night. So I strongly suggest people tune in because, like I said, this has been a terrific series. I don't really know what to make of what's happened to the Suns other than the fact that they seem like they've just been getting out-physicaled a little bit. And, frankly, Chris Paul hasn't really met the moment, which, I mean, it's happened before. It's not like this is news. There's a reason why he's never won a title. It's the reason why in his 16th season, this is his first finals, is because a lot of times when you need superstar performance, Chris Paul gives you, pretty good. And that's kind of what he's done so far. I'm not going to say he's been trash or anything like that, but it just seems like, and this has always been a criticism of Chris Paul, is that when it's time to really step up and light a team up, he rarely has done it. He did it in Game 6 against the Clippers, and that's when I tweeted, he's meeting the moment. He's finally arriving. He scored 41 points. He went bananas in that fourth quarter to close out the Clippers, who were rallying and trying to make that a 7-game series. But it just hasn't really happened after the first 2 games of the series, and there's all kinds of excuses you can make about how he's playing through some type of hand injury, how he's returning from COVID, and we've seen how COVID affects people, vaccinated or not, asymptomatic or symptomatic, whatever, how it sort of affects the recent play in the immediacy afterwards. But at the same time, this is also Chris Paul's narrative that happens all the time, so I'm not going to pretend like it's purely just because of externalities that have brought this poor or at least substandard play over the last 3 games. He's got to figure it out and figure out a way how to have an imprint on that game if they want to survive and get back to Phoenix for Game 7.
What I saw on Saturday night was, Phoenix was trying to make a comeback. They're down by like 10 or 12 or something, but then they just couldn't play any defense. Like every time the Suns scored, they would just let the Bucks score. And, you can't make a comeback without playing any defense. So the Bucks, fortunately for the Suns, clanked a bunch of free throws in a row, like all of them.
Yeah. Most of those, Giannis.
Giannis was a big part of the issue. But the thing is, like, with Giannis's free throws is he's not quite Ben Simmons-bad where they can just go up to you and hack you and say, go shoot free throws. They have to foul him when it looks like he's going to score. Because while it's worth it to not give up a layup and make him make free throws, he makes enough of them where if you just foul him every time down the floor, you're going to lose. So there's something to be said for that. I mean, 59% of your free throws is obviously terrible by NBA standards, but at the same time, if you make 60% of your free throws, that's 1.2 points per possession. That's tremendous offensive performance. So
that's true.
Yeah, it's not quite to the point where you can just say it's not like he's shooting 38% like.
And the last free throw that he shot that he missed in the best possible way, where it was basically impossible for the Suns to actually get the defensive rebound.
Yeah, that certainly was not intentional. But,
I know it wasn't, but
there is something to be said.
I thought the commentator said he missed the free throw so badly. That's why the Suns couldn't get the rebound.
Right, exactly.
He missed the whole basket.
And there is something to be said about that because teams get in position to rebound misses based off of the most likely way it's going to come off the rim. But you get unorthodox bounces when the misses are particularly ugly. That's why you oftentimes see when somebody throws up an air ball, it favors the offense because the defense has positioned themselves to
assuming
get a
it's
rebound.
Going to hit the
it's going
rim.
to rebound off of this plastic thing up here or this metal orange thing up here. Instead, it just hits nothing and it falls under the basket and somebody sneaks in there and grabs it and lays it in. So I think that there is something to be said for that. I'm not going to give Giannis a ton of flowers for it, but there is something to that as well, is you can get a rebound on a miss. That's another thing that people always they figure it's a waste of possession if you put up a shot and miss. Well, no, you can get on the glass and grab the rebound, which is something the Bucks have also done a really good job of. When they've been hot, that's obviously great because the ball's going in the basket and you're putting up points. But when they're missing, they're getting themselves second and third opportunities in one possession to potentially rectify the fact that they can't quite hit from outside or Giannis necessarily can't hit his free throws. So, I mean, that's part of being a bigger, more physical team is you get those bounces and you get rewarded for them at times. So, I think it's going to be wild in Game 6 because the Suns are going to have to empty the clip to try to get back in the series. But I just don't know how much they actually have left, and it's got to be demoralizing. You go up 2-0, and then you had, like, we were there at Looney's watching Game 4. The Suns were pretty much in control through most of the fourth quarter, and then as we were about to leave, suddenly the Bucks have tied it.
Yeah, that's
and I'm
true.
like,
I did see most of Game 4.
yeah,
Then
we were like, oh, crap, well, now 3.5 minutes left and the game's tied. I kind of want to just sit here and watch. But then the Bucks continued to, put themselves a little bit further ahead, and they got the win. And then this game, again, like I said, the Suns came out and punched the Bucks right in the mouth, and it looked like it was just going to be a classic home games, change of venue blowout. But it wasn't. The Bucks got it together, and the Suns just never really got going. And the thing is, like Evan said, it's hard to do it when you can't get stops, and a big part of the reason why they can't get stops is just because they have no answer for Milwaukee's size. So we'll move on to, we got one other NBA topic to discuss.
One last thing. Does anybody know when we get our free taco from Taco Bell for the Bucks stealing a road win?
I don't know, and the thing is, I feel bad because I kind of said free taco in all caps on the chat, because that's always been the normal thing. They steal a road game, steal a taco. That's been the NBA Finals promotional thing for Taco Bell. But I haven't really seen an ad for it like I usually do.
I went to their Twitter page, and they did have, like, hashtag steal a game.
Okay, good.
So they are doing that.
Excellent.
But they haven't announced yet when we're going to get the taco.
Usually they do it after the finals ends.
Okay.
So I would imagine if I was a betting man, and I am a betting man, but not necessarily on silly stuff like this, I would guess maybe next Tuesday, because Taco Tuesday. And I think that's how it worked for the World Series for Steal a Base, Steal a Tacos. Usually on a Tuesday.
Keeping an eye out for the tweet to let me know.
I know you're all about it. Corey had 2 free tacos because the Bay Sox scored 4 more runs in like the 6th inning, and so they got free taco coupons.
And Rashonda does not eat Taco Bell, so I got 2 of them.
Rashonda is not into Taco Bell, so Corey got to eat 2. I had my 1. And it was wonderful.
It was.
So
yeah, I was in the line. I was in the line back in October to get the, well, maybe it's November by then, to get the free taco because of the stolen base. The line was out the wazoo.
I didn't get them from the Super Bowl last year, but that was mostly just because I was still I was not leaving the house for anything.
Yeah,
basically.
Yep. So one other bit of news before we get to just some lighthearted stuff. Wes Unseld Jr. has been named the new head coach of the Washington Wizards. As most people know, the late Wes Unseld Sr. was a great Bullet who helped them win a championship back in 1977? 77 or 78, one of those 2 seasons. Yeah. And along with Elvin Hayes and Phil Chenier and a bunch of other, Bullets legends, if you will. And obviously rest in peace to Wes Unseld, who passed away last year from COVID. But Wes Unseld Jr. isn't just, a legacy hire or anything like that. He's been an assistant coach around the league for basically 20 years now, and his last stop was with the Denver Nuggets. He had been on Mike Malone's staff for about 6 years or 6 or 7, 2015 to 2021, so that would be 6 seasons. And the Nuggets staff has been highly praised. They've done a great job developing Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, and I think that's obviously what the Wizards really need, is somebody that can develop some young talent, because let's face it, the Wizards are kind of stuck in the mud right now. They don't really have a future of contention with Bradley Beal or Russell Westbrook, given the fact that Westbrook is older and Bradley Beal is probably going to get traded. Regardless of what anybody says, he's not going to be on the Wizards probably beyond the trade deadline of this coming season. And even if he is, that backcourt's just too small. There's no realistic chance of winning. So you got to get somebody that can help maybe bring guys like Rui Hachimura along, like Denny Avdia along, some of these younger players, and also players that get drafted. So it's sort of a fresh start. It's a good opportunity for Wes Unseld Jr. to go somewhere where the front office has to be patient with the team. Like, you can't sit there and say, you better turn this around in 2 years, because that's just not possible. So hopefully Ted Leonsis and the powers that be at the Wizards, whatever, decide to say, hey, let's be patient. Let's understand that this is not going to be an overnight turnaround, and we'll see how it turns out. But I'm happy for Wes Unseld Jr. I think it's a good hire.
Yeah, I don't really know a whole lot about Wes Unseld Jr. I do remember that he was on the Wizards coaching staff around the time that I kind of stopped paying as close attention to the NBA back in the mid-aughts.
It was like mid-2000s.
Yeah, so, but like I don't even know if he played college basketball. I'd imagine he played basketball at some point in his life just because of who his dad was. But I don't know if he played college basketball. I'm pretty sure he didn't play in the NBA.
I think he had a very brief NBA career.
Okay.
Just
I thought I remembered seeing something about him like coming to Washington as an assistant straight out of college, but maybe I'm misremembering that. Regardless, the point is I don't really know a whole lot about him, but I hope he has success as a coach. Firstly, just because I want anybody who's a coach to have success. The sport is better when you have good coaches. When
Sure.
you have crummy coaches, the sport is worse, right? Makes sense logically.
Yeah.
But also just the fact that he is the son of Wes Unseld, a great player for this franchise. Just all the more reason that you want him to be successful with this team.
So looking it up, Unseld was undrafted, so I don't believe he actually ever played in the NBA. That's probably what confused me, is it said NBA draft was highlighted on his Wikipedia page, so I figured, okay, so he must have been there at least for a cup of coffee, but it doesn't appear so. But he did go straight to the Wizards as a scout, and then he was promoted to being an assistant coach, and he was there for about 6 years. Then he bounced around. He was with the Warriors back in the Monte Ellis days with Steph Curry, and when they were really bad.
Yeah.
And then also the Magic post Dwight Howard when they were really bad, which is most of the time for the Magic. And then with the Nuggets, who were actually pretty good. So
there you go.
good for him. And like you said, we wish him the best. So let's move on to our last NBA topic, which is barely even an NBA topic. Cory saw Space Jam this weekend. Did you go to the theater, or did you watch it on?
Nah.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, it was actually cheaper to sign up for a month of the no ad
It was like HBO
version
Max?
of
Is
HBO
that
Max.
what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I honestly probably would not have gone and seen it if it was just me, but Rashonda really wanted to watch it. Both of us loved Space Jam as kids, but I watched the old Space Jam a few months back just for nostalgia's sake, and it doesn't hold up. It's
pretty bad.
It's not good as an adult. It was great as a kid. It's not good as an adult. So I probably would have skipped this one or waited. If it had shown up like on Netflix, a year down the road, maybe I would have watched it just for curiosity's sake. But between not liking the first one as an adult and all of the hate that I was seeing from my friends on Facebook and Twitter regarding it, I literally only watched it because Rashonda really wanted to see it, and I really went into it just like thinking, okay, I'm just gonna like make fun of every like dumb thing that happens in here, and I kind of did that early on in the movie, and Rashonda was a good sport. If it bothered her, she didn't tell me. She was, and it might have, because I was probably just like every silly thing, I was like looking at her, like rolling my eyes almost. So she probably was getting a little bit annoyed with me. But the further into the movie I got, the more I was like, it's not, a must-watch movie by any stretch, but I enjoyed it. It was a fine movie. And in fact, I liked this one better as an adult than I liked the original one as an adult. Probably not more than I liked the original Space Jam when I first saw it as a kid, but more than I liked it a few months ago as an adult.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why, again, as someone who hasn't seen the new Space Jam, I've only seen some footage in the trailers and stuff like that. And based on the trailers, I thought it looked pretty bad. But
I did too.
But at the same time, I also understand that the first one was not good. So, like, I didn't really like the first one even when I was a kid. Like, it wasn't terrible. I watched it a few times, but
I loved it.
I thought it was just silly and absurd, and I was like, okay, it was watchable as a kid. And then as an adult, I was like, I can't watch this. This is awful. And then I see just a bunch of people hyping it up, saying, "Oh my God, Space Jam was so great." And you see all the memes about the Monstars thing, and I'm like, is Space Jam really worthy of having this level of ubiquitousness?
Nostalgia.
I mean,
we always remember things that we saw as kids, even the things that we didn't like very much, as being amazing because we were kids.
Yeah, and the thing is, I saw somebody saying that it's unfair to hold Space Jam to the same standard you had for the first one because you saw the first one as a kid. But at the same time, if something's good, even if it's for kids, you should be able to enjoy it as an adult. And if you can't, then it's bad. I mean, there are plenty of Disney films that are definitely directed at children that adults can and do enjoy. Otherwise, they wouldn't take their kids. Yeah, they wouldn't take their kids to see the movies if they weren't.
Well, and the other thing is, like, I saw people tweeting and posting things like, they're not making this for your 30-year-old ass. They're making it for the kids.
Sure.
But to an extent, they are making it for us. Maybe not exclusively, but they're making this as a callback to the original, which who remembers the original? Us.
Yes.
Those of us in the millennial, roughly 30-year-old crowd, we remember that. We're the ones who are going to be more likely to want to go and see it. I mean, because adults, when Space Jam came out, probably didn't like it that much, right?
Because it's not good.
Right, we're going to go see it, and we're going to take our kids to go see it, and we need to be able to enjoy it. I thought it was fun. There were a lot of, like, just WB references. In fact, there were references to things I didn't even know that WB had the rights to.
Yeah, like the Iron Giant was running around in the trailer.
Yeah,
like, what?
and Harry Potter was in there. I'm like, wait,
Yeah,
WB owns
Warner
the rights
Brothers.
to Harry Potter? I didn't know that.
Oh,
So
well, it was in every opening theme from
I'm
Harry
sure it
Potter.
was, and I just missed it.
It's right there.
I'm sure it
Big
was.
W.
You're already not paying attention from the very beginning, like it's the first thing that shows up.
Regardless, like, there were things in it that I didn't realize that WB had the rights to, but I loved the references. The references were hilarious. The acting was, as expected, not particularly good, but it also was not as bad as I was led to think it was by the trailer and by the many posts that I saw from friends of mine on social media.
Well, and the thing is with LeBron James is that I actually had some decent hopes because I don't know if you've seen the movie Trainwreck. It's starring Amy
have not
Schumer
seen
and
it,
Bill
but-
Hader. But LeBron James features prominently playing himself, and he's awesome in that movie. Like I was like, damn, LeBron's actually really funny. His acting's solid.
Was okay in this too. He wasn't terrible.
So I had some hope that it would be pretty good. And again, I haven't seen it, so I can't really comment on it. But just coming into it, I was more optimistic for this one than I was, as an adult thinking about the original Space Jam, which was just
within the context of the scene, I'm shorter than Kevin Hart is not as bad as it appears in the trailer.
That was rough. It was rough in the trailer. Yes. But like the only issue that I really have with the idea is, like, Space Jam, the first one was, like I've said multiple times now, not good, but it was original. Like, it was an original idea to have the most famous basketball player in the world teaming up with the friggin' Looney Tunes to stop some aliens in a basketball game. Like, that's such a stupid idea, but it's kind of funny that they tried to do it. So I kind of give them a pat on the back, even though the actual movie isn't good.
They actually did a pretty decent job with the story here, where, like, it's a callback, but it also has its own originality. It's not the Monstars 2.0 or anything like that.
Yeah, but it's just the obvious, oh, well, Michael Jordan did this, so now LeBron has to do it. I'm just like,
yeah.
I would prefer to get away from having stuff like that, but that has nothing to do with the movie. It has to do with the fact that you literally
we're in this sort of culture where everything is being either remade or rebooted.
Yeah, and you also had Skip and Shannon this morning hotly discussing this makes Michael Jordan the GOAT because his Space Jam was better received or some nonsense like that. I'm like, come on.
I mean, that's how you know football season really needs to get here soon.
Right.
This is what people are talking about.
I love the NBA.
Jordan was better
but
because his Space Jam was better. Are you kidding me?
I love the NBA, but it's time to cede the stage to the NFL. I mean, I've said all the time that as an NFL guy, I only start giving a crap about the NFL season coming when we draft fantasy, and then once the Super Bowl is over, I don't care about it anymore. It's like the perfect season for me where I'm not missing it when it's gone, but as soon as it gets here, I'm really excited for it. Like every week, I'm locked in after we draft that Sunday.
Which is
Labor
always
Day.
funny because, like, after the first week, you always say something in the chat to the effect of, "I'm so sick of football. Football sucks." But then you're still locked in every week.
It's not so much that it sucks. It's just like, I don't know if I'm really ready for it. Then week one comes, I'm like, yeah, I'm in. It's perfect. It's like, once it's on, I'm in. Once it's done, I'm like, everybody's like, I miss football. I'm like, I don't. I'm good. I got my fill. I'll see you in September. But so we'll move on to, I guess we'll talk baseball next. I don't know. We got a lot of stuff. Actually, let's do Tour de France because
right. Yeah.
that's your thing. I've been blabbering about the NBA and discussing Space Jam of all things. So tell us about the bikes.
So this was the third and final week of the Tour de France, and as Eric said, I mean, this is really just 3 weeks out of the year we talk about this, and it's not because the Tour de France is the only cycling I care about. I really enjoy cycling as a sport. It's just that the Tour de France is the most prestigious of the three major stage races in cycling, the others being the Giro d'Italia and the Vuelta a España, which is coming later in the year. But between it being the oldest and most prestigious of the three, and the timing of it, the Giro d'Italia is contested in May and June, where I'm still, in school, and it's harder for me to really be able to pay close attention to it. It's like I'll know who the winner is, but I'm not watching each stage. And sort of the same thing with the Vuelta, where that is bridging August into September, right around the time that cross country is starting and I'm starting up school again. So the Tour de France is really the perfect one. It's right in the middle of the summer when I'm not doing a whole lot else. I'll miss the beginning of each stage for some of my practices, but then I'm back well in time to see the final, half or so of the race where things get exciting. So it's really just the perfect timing for it. But anyway, this past week was the final week of the Tour de France, and it was epic. It was such a good final week. Tadej Pogačar of Slovenia won both of the stages in the Pyrenees Mountains early in the week. And then on Friday was stage 19, Deceuninck Quick-Step, which is the team that Mark Cavendish, the sprinter, rides for. I really felt like they wasted an opportunity on a sprint stage to try and give him an opportunity to break the all-time record for individual stage wins over the course of a career. He tied Eddie Merckx's record earlier in the Tour with his 34th career stage win. So he had two opportunities really for number 35, which were stage 19 and the final stage on the Champs-Élysées. And they let a breakaway get 16, 17, 18 minutes out from the peloton in stage 19, just completely let them go away with it. Which, if he had ended up breaking the record in the final stage of the Tour, epic. There's no better way to finish up a Tour than for that to be the one that he breaks the record on, right? Not extending his record, but breaking it. Didn't work out that way, though. Wout van Aert of Belgium won the individual time trial on Saturday, and then the sprint finish on the Champs-Élysées on Sunday. In addition to those two, he had also won stage 11 on Mont Ventoux. So he is in a very rare class of riders who won 3 different types of stages in a single Tour de France. He won a mountain stage, he won an individual time trial, and he won a sprint stage. And that's really unheard of these days. He's the first to do it in the Tour de France since Bernard Hinault back in 1979. And before him, the only guy who was really doing that was Eddie Merckx, who had previously held sole possession of the record for individual stage wins. So that was really impressive by Wout van Aert. He's going to be really fun to watch. He's a young guy, similar to Tadej Pogačar, who wound up winning the Tour, the general classification, the yellow jersey of the Tour. So he won that along with the young riders competition, the white jersey, by a margin of 5 minutes and 20 seconds over Jonas Vingegaard of Denmark. Those two are going to be fun to watch for years to come. The fact that the top 2 guys in the Tour this year were both under 25, and in fact, Vingegaard was racing in his first career Tour de France, and he finished second. This was Pogačar's second straight year winning the Tour de France. He also won the polka dot jersey as the best climber, dubbed the King of the Mountains, by a margin of 19 points over Wouter Poels of the Netherlands. And then, despite losing the final sprint on the Champs-Élysées, Mark Cavendish won the points competition, taking the green jersey by a margin of 46 points over Australia's Michael Matthews. It was just such a fun Tour de France this year, and seeing Tadej Pogačar, the way that he rides and the way that a lot of these young riders are out there competing in a way that we haven't really seen in the past. It's really been a race of the guys in that, 27 to 33-year-old range, it feels like, for a long time. And over the past 2 or 3 years, we've started to see a little bit of a youth movement with a lot of young riders finding success in the Tour, using slightly different strategies in some cases that are unconventional but seem to work. So it's really cool to see them performing the way that they are. It'll be interesting to see if Pogačar can translate the success he's had in the last 2 Tour de France's to the Giro d'Italia or the Volta a España. I believe he's supposed to be racing in the Olympics. which it'll be tough for him to do the Tour, then race the Olympics, and then come back for the Vuelta, but I think he's planning to do both. So we'll see how that affects him going forward for this season, but he's got a really long career ahead of him. He's only 22 years old. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I've got on the Tour de France, just wrapping up the season. Really, really exciting 23 days of racing.
Yeah, it sounds like it was very competitive and a lot of fun to watch. We'll move to some Olympic news. We'll start with the pandemic stuff because I know we all love talking about that so much, but it's still going on, guys, so keep that in mind. So COVID news, Bradley Beal in COVID protocol. He's out of the Olympics. DeMatha's Jeremy Grant was also in protocols as a precaution, but he's been cleared because I don't believe he tested positive.
He never tested positive. It was just an abundance of caution.
Close contact type of thing, yeah. So no symptoms for Beal, which is good. We don't know what his vaccination status is, but I'm glad to hear that he's seemingly in good health.
Yeah, and Grant did play in our exhibition game against Spain last night. He scored 3 points and had 5 rebounds in 11 minutes of playing time. So light day getting back into the swing of things for him. But
so in other sports, Coco Gauff has tested positive. She will not compete in Tokyo either. Again, no idea whether she's been vaccinated, but again, being under 18, they've had a shorter opportunity to go get the vaccine because I believe they made it available for all adults probably late April, I think.
Yeah, and she was at Wimbledon too. So I mean, she's been in the middle of a competition season. It's a little bit harder, I think, to figure out the logistics of getting the vaccine. Yep. So if she hasn't been, she at least I feel like has a bit of a valid excuse for having not quite gotten there yet.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm over admonishing people for this. These are the consequences of your actions. But obviously, we wish everybody the best of health, and it's unfortunate that she's going to miss out on this opportunity, regardless of vaccinated or not. It's sad, but this is where we are in 2021. Hopefully, things will continue to improve. But we'll move to some other stories regarding coronavirus, which unfortunately there's been quite a few. 2 gymnastics alternates for Team USA are in isolation after one tested positive. So not quite the main team at this point, but people who might need to step in or might have needed to step in if somebody on the main team got sick.
And who have been around the rest of the team. I mean, it's
they're still practicing stuff.
Yeah,
they're not just on their own. Yeah,
right. But it's fortunate that the other gymnast who has to go into isolation is also an alternate, and it wasn't somebody like Gabby.
Sure. Yeah, that would have been bad. 6 British athletes and 2 staff members are in isolation after coming into contact with somebody who tested positive. As of 10 a.m. today, 61 total positive cases have been reported, 33 of which are residents of Japan, with the other 26 members of contingents arriving from overseas. So a lot of people from the home country. We know that Japan's had a lot of concerns about hosting the games with the pandemic going on, especially because
they've had rising case numbers over the past couple months now, it seems.
Again, it's just another note for awareness. Not everybody has the United States resources to vaccinate their populations. A lot of countries, even developed ones like Japan, like a lot of European countries, are running way behind, especially compared to the United States, in vaccination rates and things like that. So it's not as rosy of a picture as the United States was a few weeks ago, and even the United States is starting to see rising cases again because of
LA is going back into mask mandates.
Yep, so hopefully we can get this under control before it becomes a complete crisis like it was this time last year and for the previous 16 months, but people got to act right, and that seems to be hard for certain individuals to do.
Yeah, I mean, one official did try to put the COVID rate in Japan with the Olympics into perspective, and said that it is within reasonable levels because there are about 22,000 people arriving in Japan for the games, which with 61 positive cases, that puts the positive case rate around 0.1%.
Sure.
At least so far. Obviously, there could be more coming. Fingers crossed that doesn't turn out to be the case. But then you also have athletes who have simply decided not to go for this reason because they don't want to risk it. One of them is American cyclist Sepp Kuss, who won stage 15 of the Tour de France, the first American to win a stage in 10 years. He's going to prepare for the Vuelta a España because he doesn't want to get on a flight to Japan during COVID. Yeah, understandably.
It's a tricky situation to be in because, again, we've been put under the narrative that things have improved and we're post-pandemic now, but that's not the case for most countries, and it's really actually not the case for this country, but especially internationally, there are people that are really struggling to contain this virus, and bringing a whole bunch of people in from other countries courts disaster at times. So we hope for the best, obviously, and yes, that is an optimist take that only 0.1% have been infected, but you still have to have an abundance of caution so that it doesn't become an exponential situation like we know pandemics do. That's how they exist. So hopefully they take the necessary care to make sure that they can get this under control. So we'll move to some sports we can watch before, I guess, the opening ceremonies on Saturday, because they always have certain things that happen.
Yes, well, so Friday is when the opening ceremonies are, but things really start to go crazy, like early Saturday morning, like midnight Saturday morning.
Yeah, like full out. So the United States will play Italy in softball tomorrow at 11 p.m. on NBC Sports Network. From Fukushima. Wow, this is interesting. Where a nuclear plant meltdown happened. Yes, I remember the earthquake. I remember the story about it. That's actually what. This is an aside that I don't know why I thought of it, but it's what got Gilbert Gottfried fired from the Affleck commercials, because he made an uncouth joke about the earthquake situation.
Right, yeah.
And and I always think of that because I'm always like, every time I see an Affleck commercial, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Gilbert Gottfried used to do that, and he got fired. Why did he get fired again? Oh right, because he decided to
make a joke about Fukushima.
Yeah, which
he used to voice the duck.
Yes, he also voiced Iago in the Aladdin film.
Yeah, and Digit in Cyber Chase. If you ever watched that on PBS, I don't know if you guys did. I did.
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
It was a good show.
I'm not saying it's not a good show, but it's clearly not what I named. Like, those are much more famous.
Sure.
People know. That's more inside pop culture stuff. You're
Most people who watched Arthur back in the day watched Cyber Chase.
I didn't really watch Arthur that much.
Yeah, you might not have, but
I was not. I didn't watch a lot of PBS.
Cyber Chase until this very
I did
moment.
like Arthur, though.
Anyway,
softball will not be featured in the Olympics until 2028, I guess.
Okay. So it won't be featured again until 2028.
Right, it's going to be featured this year. Understood.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was implied with them playing in Fukushima. I don't think they're just doing that for fun. Yeah.
Well, we kind of got on a sidetrack. People could forget that we were talking about softball, not a different sport.
Yeah, because we were going into
Gilbert Gottfried.
Who got fired for being a jerk. Oh, man. Anyway, the United States will play Sweden in soccer. Be women's soccer. Are the men even competing in the Olympics?
That's why I put women's for obvious reasons in there.
Oh, so that we'll watch, because we don't care if it's the men's because they stink and they're trash.
We know that the men aren't competing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're awful. But
I'm sure they're whining about
Eric
it.
Clearly did not look at these show notes before he's reading them off right now.
I'm reading them off because these are just not that relevant, to be honest. But I wanted to inform the audience about all this Olympic crap that's going on.
So no country has ever followed up a World Cup title with an Olympic title. We'll see if the U.S. can make it a first time this year. But the last time that these two teams met, U.S. and Sweden, was in the quarterfinals of the 2016 Olympics, when Sweden beat us on penalty kicks. And Hope Solo called the Swedes a bunch of cowards for the way they were playing, and ended up being suspended, and she has not played a game for our national team since then.
She's also had a lot of other issues.
She has.
Domestic violence issues. So.
Yes.
So anyway, opening ceremony is Friday at 7 o'clock in the morning, our time. Or our time being East Coast time, for those of you who are not living on the Eastern Seaboard. There will also be coverage of the rowing, so it's like crew, I guess, or some sculling and other things like that at 7:30 on USA. Wow, they're really pulling out all the stops with these cable networks. So when you catch your rerun of Suits, then you can flip over and you can watch some rowing right after that, or SVU that you've watched 3 million times. So first round action of singles and doubles tennis will be covered on the Olympic Channel Friday at 10 p.m., and then coverage gets crazy beginning at 12 a.m. when it just goes bonkers. So.
Yep.
That'll be a good time. At that point,
you'll be able to tune in to NBC, NBCSN, the Olympic Channel, USA, Golf Channel's going to have some. Yeah. It's going to be all over.
Yeah, so if you want to watch sports, just go to a sports-esque channel. Apparently USA qualifies now, so it'll be...
all of NBC's channel.
USA is run by NBC, so...
I actually didn't know that. I didn't know USA was.
What about Bravo? They have stuff on Bravo.
I don't know if
Does
Bravo is.
even
I know.
exist
So I know that
anymore?
there's at least 2 Spanish speaking channels. So Telemundo is one that'll cover the Olympics, and there was one other one. I forget which
I
one.
forget what it's called too. I know what you're talking about though. Anyway,
I don't remember off the top of my head, but
I hope everybody can enjoy the games despite some of the surrounding misfortune with the coronavirus. And as we mentioned last week, the games will not be featuring fans in the building, so it'll just be a made-for-TV product. So hopefully that doesn't kill your buzz. But as people that watch sports for a year with no crowds, we're kind of used to it at this point. So we'll jump back to baseball now. We had quite a bit of news to cover from over the weekend, plus last week's All-Star Game and Home Run Derby, which we sort of previewed last week. So a little bit of old news, but we'll start there. So Home Run Derby was fun. Pete Alonso was amazing. Won for
my goodness.
for the second year in a row. Like, my goodness. He's just cranking out home runs, vibing to music, watching people tear their ACLs.
poor Salvador Perez.
He had such a great round.
He had the second most home runs in the first round and got eliminated because he just happened to be matched up with Pete Alonso.
And it wasn't like it was an epic showdown like Ohtani and Soto. He was an afterthought while he was hitting all these bombs. It was unfortunate as hell. Just a rough matchup for him. I think Alonso, I understand how they seeded him, but Pete Alonso was definitely underseeded given what he's capable of in a derby format. I mean, that's just, especially because his pitcher was on point too. That dude was putting it on the money.
If you get a chance, try and find on Twitter, look at like the pitch chart of where the balls are being placed for Pete Alonso. They're all around that middle quadrant. If you look at the 3x3, they're all like right around the middle.
So, as I mentioned, Pete Alonso was ruining the feel-good story of our boy Trey Mancini, who absolutely represented as best as possible. He was great. I remember in his first round, I was a little bit discouraged by the guy that was throwing pitches to him because some of them were not even close to the strike zone. But eventually he got into a rhythm, and man, when Mancini was in a rhythm, he looked like he could go toe-to-toe with Pete Alonso, which he kind of did. I mean, he had a really good final round when they actually did go head-to-head. He escaped his first round because Matt Olson had a really
had a really
nice
good
round.
one, but he finished one short.
Yeah, and there was some talk about Trey Mancini's last home run was after the buzzer. I'm like, it's entertainment, guys. Like, let's not make a big fuss about this. But he did great. The story was out there. People that didn't know about it now knew, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people that could benefit from hearing that story because, like Mancini said, that there is life after a cancer diagnosis, and he's living proof of that. I mean, he's out there playing good baseball. He's competing at the highest level. He's in a Major League Showcase mashing home runs in front of millions of people. So, there's always hope, and he did such a good job of carrying that burden of being sick and being able to come back the year after and still be as good as he is because, I mean, again, some of it's luck. You can't always beat cancer. You can't always beat some of these really dangerous diseases, but some of it's also character as well. And Mancini was always a guy that, as Orioles fans, we knew that he always carried himself the right way, and he was going to be a fighter with this, and he proved everybody right with that. So It was definitely cool to see him do what he did. Like I mentioned, we also had epic first-round showdowns between the favorite of Shohei Ohtani and sort of, again, another little bit of an underseeded Juan Soto. Again, I understand it was purely math how they seeded him, but Juan Soto's got power out the wazoo, man. So when I see him as the 8 seed, I'm just like, that could be a problem for anybody. But
to be fair, the only reason that they even had to go to even a first overtime, let alone a second overtime, was because Ohtani didn't hit a home run for the first 45 to 60 seconds.
It took him so long to get into that type of rhythm.
Everything was like a line drive and a ground ball.
Yeah, he's hitting a lot of ground balls to the right side, and it wasn't really clicking for him. And then once he got into a groove, he started hitting them just like everybody else.
He was hitting them quicker than everybody else. Every single one was just blasted.
Yeah, and then and then Juan Soto clutched up big time in the
second overtime where they gave each person 3 swings. He hit 3 home runs.
That
in
was
3
the
swings.
least surprising thing to me because anybody that watched the 2019 World Series, especially as someone who was rooting against the Nats, knows how terrifying Juan Soto is at the plate. That dude just smokes the ball. And, I'm, again, not a Nats guy, but I can't help but like Juan Soto. He's a lot of fun to watch.
He is.
He deserved to advance, but he looked like another one of those guys that got a little gassed in the second round. He did not didn't really compete.
That's the other thing is it was weird because if you want the number one seed to be competitive beyond the first round, like I get why you would want in a vacuum to have the one seed as the last guy in the first round because they're kind of the showstopper. They're the one that everybody's here to see, most likely. And in particular this year, with it being a pitcher who's seeded number one, he's definitely the one everybody is coming to see if there's only one person you want to see. So, yeah, you want to make sure that you keep people engaged through the entire first round, so you put him last. The problem is, if Ohtani made it through, he's going to be gassed, just as Juan Soto was, because he's the last guy. He has less rest than the first two guys who go in the second round, and even than the guy he's matched up against in the second round.
Yeah, but let's also keep in perspective that Ohtani wasn't the one seed because everybody wanted to see him. He was the one seed because he hit all the
he hit the most home runs.
So if he had hit 6 fewer home runs, he would have been a lower seed and would have hit earlier, even though he's still the guy that everybody wants to see.
Right. No, absolutely. And I hear that, but that's why I said too, especially when it is a pitcher who is leading the league in home runs and is the one seed.
Plus,
it's all the more reason that you would want him to be the last one going.
This is also not exactly what you would call super important.
No.
Like, you could easily just not have the 1-8 matchup be last. You could easily just frame it around who you want to go when, and things like that.
Well, and that's really the point that I'm trying to make, is that you don't have to make it 1 versus 8 last.
No.
But, when it's the home run leader, and then on top of that, the fact that it is a pitcher, I understand why you would want them to be the last one in the first round to try and get people engaged through the first round. Maybe they are more likely to stay through.
Sure, but it puts them at a bit of a disadvantage because they don't get the recovery.
Big time.
But
I thought Trey Mancini was at the disadvantage because he went first, and then if he did advance, the person who goes first, they're sometimes sitting for an hour and a half. They might get cold.
Well, so that's a different kind of disadvantage. I think you almost want to kind of be in the middle.
It's a rest versus rust thing.
Yeah.
It's the age-old debate. And the bottom line is nobody was beating Pete Alonso because he just did not get tired. I mean, as Mancini looked a little gassed in his second round, then he was rejuvenated for the final, which was nice to see.
Yeah.
But Alonso is Alonso. That when he closed the gap, I think he needed 6 to win when he got his bonus time, and it was 6 swings and 6 home runs. And it was just we're out of here. So
Alonso took a timeout to dance around, in the second round.
And
he just timeout. I'm just gonna play some music and bop my head back and forth.
Kind of
he's
get that
still
kid
behind.
Off the field.
He's losing.
He's
like, I got this.
That's life goals right there.
Yeah,
exactly.
Obviously, we hope for the best for the kid out there that had to be carried off. Hopefully, he's okay. I don't know who put this in here about complaints about the broadcast. I'm not really.
I assumed that you did, so I crossed it out and said praise for the
I did not put that in there because I didn't plan on talking about it.
I guess Evan wanted to let you vent if you still wanted to.
Spent 3 hours last week arguing back and forth.
Maybe he got it out of his system.
I did get it out of my system. And another thing is and we all agreed on the main point that the one thing that was missing was the distances on the home run.
Yes.
Especially given the fact that it was at Coors Field, which is that was the most intriguing part of it being at Coors Field was I want to see how far these balls are going to fly.
Yeah.
And we didn't get it. And the thing is,
most of the really long ones I saw the distance for, but there were a few that they didn't show it for. That I'm like,
they used to always have it just pop up.
Go?
They used to have it just pop up where the ball hit, and that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then so I flipped over to the StatCast one, figuring, they'll probably just do it over here. They weren't doing it on the StatCast one. I'm like, come on,
that's problematic.
That's the main stat.
Yeah, that's the whole. That's why we're here. They're showing stats percentage of balls hit for home runs on swings. I'm like, I don't care at all about that. I want to know how far the ball went. And so,
I want to know the launch angle, the exit velocity, and the projected distance. That's all. I don't need to see anything else. I assume that was what the StatCast version was going to be for.
It was surprisingly disappointing. I was like, come on, StatCast, get it together. But and what made me ultimately flip back it was 2 things. It was one, they would do, how they do on-field interviews during the Derby and stuff like that. And they were talking to Nolan Arenado. on the Statcast version, you didn't get any of that audio. Like from the interviewee or the interviewer. Like
that's
it was
annoying.
just nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I kind of want to hear what he's saying.
Yeah.
I guess I have to flip back. And then like what was the final nail in the coffin for Statcast for me was, I guess they tried to cut so that we could both see the swing and the ball in the same frame, so they had like a side view of it. But the batter was like this big, like you could barely see him, and like you could barely see the ball either. I'm like, nah, let's go back to the other one.
Yeah,
but
I pretty much stuck on the regular one. I liked the regular one.
I was curious about the Statcast, so I watched a couple of batters there. But when the interviews weren't coming through, I was like, nah, this is supposed to be a spectacle. I don't really care all that much for these fancy numbers, especially because you're not showing the most important one. So, regardless, it was a really good home run derby, and I liked it a lot. So, I'm not going to sit there and crap on the broadcast. I had my complaints. I aired them last week. I'm not
privacy of our chat.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get into all that again because again, they were mostly minor complaints. But distances definitely need to be back next year.
Yes,
that's amazing when I get to see these supermen hit bombs 500 feet, and I'm just like,
we won't be seeing as many of those next year when we're not in Colorado, unfortunately.
Yeah, but you still see some big bombs. So.
I mean,
Shohei Ohtani. When we were doing our podcast last week, and Shohei Ohtani hit one to the fourth deck during warmups.
Yeah, we both took a stop.
And Eric and I just like looked at each other. We're like, "What did we just see?"
Yeah, I needed to see a distance on that one. That was sick. So
I think somebody hit one 520 feet in the Derby.
Soto hit the 520 foot one. Yeah. So we'll move to the actual All-Star game. The American League won 5-2.
Oh, we don't want to talk about the celebrity softball game?
Or the guy who fell down the tunnel.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, that was too bad. And by too bad, I mean amazing.
They interviewed him on Fox. He was fine. They interviewed him like minutes
I'm glad
later.
that he was fine, because
like
that was hilarious.
Like, the only thing that he looked like he hurt was his pride. I mean, that's... He didn't look like he was
pride is
injured.
hurt bad.
Yeah, the pride is...
Everybody saw it.
Yeah.
10 million people.
I mean, I don't know why he felt inclined to do what he did, but hey, we make bad decisions sometimes in the heat of the moment. It's just unfortunate that his happened to be on national television.
The only noteworthy thing from the celebrity softball game was that Zach from 13 Reasons hit a home run right after Eric and I said on the chat, like, really? He's playing?
That's noteworthy for us. That's noteworthy for us. For normal people who don't watch crappy TV shows on Netflix because of a guilty pleasure.
This is our podcast. We always talk about things that are only noteworthy to us.
That's true, but like also DK Metcalf said he was awesome and he was terrible. So
that
happens a lot, man.
Bad.
That happens a lot. You know, like when John Wall said he was a star shortstop, and then he goes out there on his first pitch and he just augers it straight into the
first
dirt.
base. Like, I mean, that was 50 Cent, Carly Rae Jepsen, the mayor of Cincinnati. That was in there with those first pitches.
It was not good. Not good at all.
Not good.
So anyway, All-Star game. American League won 5-2. Vladdy Jr. was named All-Star game MVP because he hit
great.
A home run derby worthy bomb. Like, my goodness, he crushed that ball. After he almost beheaded Max Scherzer in his first at-bat. This is the 8th straight win for the American League. Now, there are some production things from this that I didn't care for, like Joe Buck badgering the players while interviewing them on the field.
Oh, my goodness.
That was a little awkward at times.
The worst of them, to me at least, was Fernando Tatis when he's at the plate batting, right? Like, most of the ones where they're in the field, I was okay with. I thought that Joe Buck was a little bit too intrusive at times, but I did enjoy some of the back and forth. There was good and bad in a lot of those. Sure. Like the one with Freddie Freeman in the second inning was great. Yeah, I loved that one, but like he's at first base, he's not doing quite as much as far as infielders go. We also probably got a little bit lucky that was an inning where he didn't have to do a whole lot.
It was also the say something to Vladdy as he's rounding the bags. I'm like,
right, so that was with Fernando Tatis. He was playing shortstop, and as Vlad was coming around after hitting a bomb in the game, he's like trying to tell him to say something. It's like if he's gonna say something, he'll say something. You don't need to like give him directions like you're the producer on the broadcast.
My favorite thing was the fact that he said it in Spanish. Like I loved the fact
I loved that too.
Just like,
that was
say
great.
something.
It's like, yeah, I'll say something so you don't know what I'm saying.
This is worthless to me because I don't understand what the hell you said.
But then when they come back the next inning and Fernando Tatis is at the plate and Joe Buck is in his ear again, he's like asking questions in between pitches, and then he ends up popping out. It went into center field. It was a fairly deep pop out,
routine fly ball.
But it was a routine fly ball. And he's like going back to the bench, clearly frustrated. Probably really fighting to bite his tongue to not drop an F-bomb or something on the broadcast. And Joe Buck is going to push him and just like push his buttons and just prod him and needle him and be like, "Hey, bet you wish that you had that pitch back. I bet you wish you had that pitch back, right, Fernando?"
So,
Fernando, can you hear me?
On that pop-up, Fernando.
Fernando,
I
bet you wish you had that pitch back, right, Fernando? I'm like, Joe,
you're supposed to answer tough questions.
Shut up, Joe.
Jeez.
Yeah, I think some of the interviews where the guy was batting.
That's too much.
They can probably get rid of those.
And when they had
Liam Hendricks
mic'd
where
up,
the mic didn't work.
Well, no, I think the mic worked fine. I think he just didn't care. He wasn't going to talk to them. I think he was just like, okay. They said, well, the mic works fine because you could hear him dropping F-bombs and other swear words while he was not pitching the greatest. But then when Buck would try to ask him questions, he seemingly couldn't hear him. He's like, well, the earpiece isn't working, but the mic is. I'm like, nah, I bet you the earpiece is probably working fine. He's trying to close out the All-Star game, and he's not interested in talking to you. Like that. Like,
why did he agree to do the interview then?
I don't know.
I mean, we also don't know exactly what the process was for getting the guys on the mic. Like, they might have had to sign something before going to the All-Star game that said, hey, like, you agree to, allow the production crew to use you and put you on the broadcast in the middle of the game, and people sign it, but, they can just decide, well, then I'm just not going to respond. I'm going to ignore them if they're talking to me.
Oh, I mean,
and I don't blame them.
One thing Major League Baseball said they were going to try to crack down on is the guys just skipping the All-Star game just because. Looking at you, Houston Astros players, for example.
Well, it wasn't just because. They just didn't want to be booed.
Well, yeah, they're skipping just because. That's not a real reason, right? Kenny Rogers punched a cameraman.
It's a real reason. It's not a good reason, but it's a real reason. Yeah. It's tangible.
Weak sauce
I understand it.
Right there. Yeah, Kenny Rogers punched a cameraman like a week before the All-Star game, and then he's pitching in the All-Star game, gets announced, boo! Like, you have to be a man and take it sometimes. I know why Jacob deGrom wasn't there, but he's found himself on the injured list again. He never pitches. This guy's supposed to be the best pitcher. He doesn't do any pitching. Come on, man. Can't make the club in the tub.
He's done a lot of pitching this year. Maybe not as much as you want because he's on your squad, but
yeah, exactly. It's like I'm trying to win. Jacob deGrom.
Hey, my best player is out for the second half of the season with an ACL tear, so I'm not really feeling bad if deGrom gets scratched for a start or two.
Well, he's on the IL, retroactive to the 15th or whatever.
Okay, well, that was a while ago, so he'll be back soon.
Yeah.
Ish.
Pitcher I would like to shout out is Kevin Gausman, who didn't pitch in the All-Star game because he pitched last Sunday, but I could tell it really meant a lot to him because so he's gets to be an all-star. He grew up in Colorado, so I was just really excited for him to get that recognition, particularly there. I
really liked the reception that Nolan Arenado got at the All-Star game, and he left Colorado, but he spent so much of his career there, and for them to receive him the way they did is awesome.
Yeah, and he's probably
he seemed to really be happy
the greatest
to be back
Rocky
for a game.
of all time. Like he's I don't think
would you say him or Larry Walker?
Nolan Arenado is better than Larry Walker.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, Nolan Arenado is incredible.
Yeah, he's going to the Hall of Fame.
I used to get crap for underrating Larry Walker, so I don't know.
Larry Walker is a really good player. I'm not hating on him. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. Is he in the Hall of Fame? Did they ever play
Yes,
him?
he is.
Okay, because I remember it took him a lot longer than it should have.
Because I think I was hating on his Hall of Fame selection or induction, and people were like,
and I was like,
Larry Walker is great. What are you talking
bro.
about?
Yeah, he was a very good player, but Nolan Arenado is going to be first ballot, assuming he doesn't suffer a severe injury or something like that, which obviously we hope that does not happen.
Yeah.
So
Nolan Arenado had a knack for being clutch as well, if you'll allow me to say that clutch is a thing. Like he had a walk-off 3-run home run on Father's Day to be the to hit for the cycle. Like, who does that? Like MLB Network cuts in just watch Arenado's about. He hits it out. That was the game where he got the bloody nose in the dog pile at home plate, whatever. I mean, the guy had a knack for rising to the moment. At least I thought he did.
Yeah, it's always fun when those sorts of things happen on like a holiday
Yeah.
my first year playing fantasy baseball, I had Dallas Braden on his Mother's Day perfect game, and that was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, that is pretty cool. The Orioles game started.
So let's speaking of the Orioles, let's get to our teams and what they've done in the last 4 days or so since the All-Star break ended. I guess we'll go with the O's. Evan, what do you got? Because
The O's, hon, take 2 out of 3 in Kansas City. So after getting walloped on Friday night, they take the next 2. So I was putting our notes. Matt Harvey revenge game yesterday. Matt Harvey, who had already been signed up for a one-way ticket out of town like weeks ago because he's been awful. 6 scoreless innings, 3 hits, 2 strikeouts, and a walk yesterday.
Did Matt Harvey pitch for Kansas City?
Briefly,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't
He
think
was
I
also
realized
bad
that.
there.
he was also with the Reds for a little bit too.
Yeah, where he was bad.
Yes.
But yeah, Matt Harvey pitched well yesterday. His first good start in like 2 months.
It's funny
so-
because
Tell us what his ERA is down to after that excellent start yesterday.
After 6 scoreless innings, his ERA is down to 7.13 for the
Jeez.
season.
It should be noted that Matt Harvey had his first good game in 2 months on the anniversary of the release of The Dark Knight. So there you go.
Okay, a movie I have seen
Yes, and
multiple times.
a nickname that he had for
Yes.
some reason,
Yes.
which don't know why.
I don't know why he had that nickname, but I guess because of Harvey Dent.
But The Dark Knight was not Harvey Dent. The Dark Knight's Bruce
I know,
Wayne.
but he was in the movie. I know. Like, if anything, he should be Two-Face, but he was really good, so you don't want to call him Two-Face.
No,
So he was the hero for New York.
He was the Mets
for
ace.
Gotham.
Yeah.
So, but
Well, that's
I
why
don't
he
know.
was
That's
the
just the
Dark
best
Knight.
guess I can have on where the connection would be to the Dark Knight.
Okay.
He pitched for New York, and he was heroic. and
It's not
stuff.
much, but it's a bit more than anything else I can think of.
Yeah.
Most nicknames are stupid, aren't they? Like they're
Yeah.
usually ridiculous.
Yes.
So
So
like Noah Syndergaard's called Thor because of his hair, like
Well, yeah, I
dead
get-
flesh that grows out of your skin that can be cut off. I don't know that that's nickname worthy.
Well, no, that he doesn't cut off. That's
well,
yeah.
it seems like you might just be jealous of his flow, Evan.
No, I'm not jealous. I think bald is beautiful, actually.
I know you
think
do.
You should be jealous of my lack of flow. To be honest.
I am jealous
Both
of your
halves of
lack
my
of
arm are
needing a
still
comb.
attached.
Yeah, you don't have to wash your hair, or maybe you do, but not like.
I wash my hair. That's gross, Eric. Come on.
I mean, we got more of it though. That's the problem. Is we gotta wade
What-
through the
what is
the forest.
You know what it's like to have this sponge growing out of your head that everything sticks to it?
No, I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, we'll keep talking about the Orioles instead of our hair care routines.
Yeah, because I have one, contrary to popular belief.
I don't doubt that. I'm just saying we've got more hair to take care of.
Anyway, the Norfolk Tides are in town to take on the Gwinnett Stripers here in North Georgia, so I would like to attend at least a couple of those. I was going to go tomorrow, but of course tomorrow looks like rain, so it's like 70% chance of thunderstorms, so we'll try again later this week. And then the Orioles are taking on the Rays down at the Trop, Cory's favorite ballpark, for 3. Then they have a day off Thursday, and then host the Nationals for 3 back in Baltimore.
We do not stand for the Trop. Evan stands for the Trop.
The baseball world is so free flowing and fast that I barely noticed that the Nationals had just collapsed down the standings in the NL East. Like they were within a couple of games of first place a few weeks ago, and then they've just been in a tailspin since, and they're like 6 games under 500 again. So
Yeah, they're not very good.
I'll probably
the team that's
be-
irrelevant is the Phillies. They're not bad enough to be talked about. They're certainly not good enough to be talked about. They're just there.
yeah, they just exist.
I'll probably also be at a minor league game this coming weekend. I'll be going down to Durham, North Carolina, with Rashawn, and we're planning to go to a Durham Bulls game while we're down there.
Sweet.
So that should be fun.
Should be a good time.
On to my Yankees, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
And we actually won a game against the Boston Red Sox.
Two.
And we won 2 of them. Basically the same as the Orioles story with Kansas City. We lost the game Friday, won Saturday and Sunday. So we are now 2-7 against them on the season. Probably would have been 2-8, but Thursday's game got postponed because the Yankees are having more COVID issues. 6 players landed on the COVID list, including Aaron Judge, Gio Urshela, and Kyle Higashioka. So the rest of the team, negative tests for COVID and everything. So the rest of the team returned to action on Friday in a 4-0 loss to the Red Sox. Then they won Saturday 3-1, 9-1 on Sunday. In Saturday's game, a fan was ejected and subsequently, and appropriately I would say, banned for life from future Major League Baseball games. Not just Yankees games, but any Major League Baseball game. At some point during the game, Alex Verdugo, one of Boston's outfielders, was tossing a ball into the stands to a young Red Sox fan. And some idiot Yankees fan intercepted the ball from this kid and then threw it back at Verdugo and hit him in the back. And now, he was not hurt, but obviously was upset. He wound up at one point during a stoppage in play due to weather, had to be held back by their first base coach while he was yelling at the crowd. The thing that interested me was that there were some people on Yankees Twitter who were trying to compare this to the incident in Boston where Giancarlo Stanton hit a home run over the monster and a fan threw the ball back and hit him as he was rounding second heading to third. These are 2 completely different incidents. Like, when you hit a home run in a road ballpark, it's sort of tradition to throw the ball back on the field. Sometimes you throw it kind of far. Sometimes you throw it kind of hard. And when you are at the top of the green monster, where you're very high you're very high in the air, you're also much closer to the infield than most outfield fans would be, because they built it closer because it's such a tall freaking wall. It's a little bit more likely that you might hit somebody, not necessarily on purpose. Maybe he was trying to hit Giancarlo Stanton. I think he probably was. A lot of people on Twitter think that he was. But you're much further away, which means the ball is going to slow down. You're not hitting him on a line. It bounced and hit him. Giancarlo Stanton looked at him and was just kind of like, hat tip. He's like, wow, that was actually kind of impressive. It
was a really good throw.
It was a really good throw.
Yeah.
You know, like this is not somebody who was purposely trying to hurt him. Like, this guy did not rear up and just like throw a laser at Giancarlo. He threw it with some arc. It bounced. It hit him. Barely. As he was running. No big deal. These are not the same incidents. This was a Yankees fan who, as far as I could tell, was throwing this with some passion, like with some hate. Doesn't like Verdugo, wants to hurt him. That's not acceptable. So I'm glad that they kicked him out. I'm glad that they banned him from future games. That is not okay.
Well, and you throw in the fact that Verdugo was just trying to do something nice for a kid fan.
Yeah, Verdugo is like, he's like one of those he's one of the few current Red Sox players that most Yankees fans actually like and have respect for.
Apparently not this.
This is only his second year on the Red Sox.
But he's a
he
likable
hasn't had
guy.
enough time for it to build up.
Yeah, but also he's a likable guy.
He was part of the Mookie Betts trade. He was the centerpiece of that.
Yeah.
Wait till he hits some dingers against the Yankees and people won't like him as much.
That's true.
Yeah,
So anyway, so the game that was postponed on Thursday, that will be made up as the first half of a split admission doubleheader on August 17th. That's the next time that the Red Sox will be in New York. We do play them in Boston this week, so we'll start a 2-game set tomorrow against Philly at home, and then head up to Boston for a 4-game set Thursday through Sunday. So that'll be an opportunity to try and close down some of that 7-game hole that we are in behind Boston in the AL East. I don't have much hope of that happening, but
the Yankees still in 4th place in the division.
We are still in 4th. We're a game behind the Blue Jays. I think the Rays are only like half a game behind the Red Sox, and part of that is because the Red Sox are like 4-6 over the last 10. The Yankees are 7-3. we're actually have a 3-game lead over them over the past 10 games, but they'll probably beat us most of those games up in Boston.
Yeah, that doesn't. That
The Rays are half game back. Toronto's 6 back. The Yankees are 7 back, and the Orioles are 1,000 million games back. So,
all right, give me 1 second.
Making up numbers, and we like to tease me for my math.
Million.
Yeah, we're all of the games back. If the Orioles win, the rest of the games will have 100-win season. So,
yeah,
that's optimism right there, baby. That's a playoff record. Yes. So we'll move on to some other Major League Baseball news, starting with some. We'll start with the fun, silly news first. Taijuan Walker was pitching for the Mets against the Pirates yesterday afternoon and had a boo-boo out there on the field. So he gives up a little squibber that starts off very much in foul territory, but as anybody who's watched baseball for 5 minutes knows, doesn't matter where the ball starts, it matters where it finishes when the ball is touched or when it gets by third base. And in this case, well, the ball squibbed just barely eking over the third base foul line, which means it's a fair ball. And Taijuan Walker went to try to slap the ball away before it got there. He was not in time. And so that's an understandable situation where you do that.
I don't have a problem with the move to do that.
Yeah, he just didn't get there in time. The problem is the bases were loaded, and Taijuan Walker decided instead of going to get the ball that he has now knocked away towards the visiting team's dugout, he has now decided instead he's going to argue with the umpire while Pirates are circling the bases. So all 3 base runners scored, and the runner ended up on second base for, 2-base and 3-run error from Taijuan Walker. And just kind of a really, almost like a low point of the season type of moment for the Mets, except for the fact that they came back and won the game despite trailing 6-0 after that point. But
I think he just saw an opportunity to go ahead and clear the bases without actually having any earned runs tacked against him.
It's clever.
I feel like if the pitcher makes the error, that should be an earned run.
I agree with you, Evan. I'm just saying
you really earned it.
It's not the rule. So, but yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. How many times have any of you seen an umpire change the call on the field because a player said, "Hey, you got that wrong," or screamed at you, "You got that wrong"? How many
some
times?
extra words in there, I'm sure.
With some other words in there that I
times.
can't say on the podcast. How many times have you seen that happen?
I think 0 times.
In my 25 years of watching baseball, never. So
Same.
Yeah,
so
0.
What makes more sense? Yelling at the umpire, "No, that was a foul ball," or going and getting the ball, preventing at least 2. He probably could have prevented 2 of the runs, certainly the last one of them, and then maybe try and challenge the play. I mean, I would imagine that that's a challengeable play, but even if it's not, then you can make your case and try and have that discussion. Like, no umpire is going to change the call in the middle of the play. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, the ball's still live.
Right.
There's people running. The Pirates' third base coach almost touched home plate himself.
You can go back and figure things out after the case, but it's the same thing as what happens in the NFL. If it's part of the reason why more and more the referees are calling the fumble on the field and then discussing it and potentially calling it down by contact or going to the replay to see if they were down by contact. Because if they were not down by contact, anything from when you blow the whistle, you have to play it dead. Because even if one player scoops it up and takes it the distance, everybody on the other team is reacting to the whistle. They're not chasing them down. If you let the play run as a live ball situation, everybody plays it out. You can go back and figure out, okay, should it have been a dead ball at this point? And you can fix that.
Yes. And, I mean, with baseball, with no clock, the umpires can just point and stuff like, hey, we screwed that up. You go back to this base, you go back to this base, you go back to this base. The count is this.
Now, obviously, umpires in baseball do not have the best track record of correcting themselves. But
they don't make the calls on the challenges either.
But they also don't make the calls on the challenges. And regardless, you know that they're not going to change it during a live ball situation and all of a sudden change to, oh, yeah, no, you're right, it was a foul ball. No. You kidding me? No.
Well, and you got to feel for the umpire in this case because he got a whole earful, face full from everybody I think he made the right call.
He
I
did.
The
think
ball was on the
he
chalk.
absolutely made the right call. It was on the
Like,
chalk. It was on the chalk.
Yeah. So
100%.
The only argument you could make is that some people have said that they thought the ball might have hit the batter en route, but I didn't see anything.
I didn't see any
conclusive to-
contact, but yeah, that's the only
That's
part
the close.
of it that,
Yeah,
like,
whether it was
maybe-
on the line or not, no, it was hovering over the line as a fair
Yes.
ball. Yeah, that's indisputable based off of the video evidence.
And if it had hit the batter, there would have been no need for Taijuan Walker to slap it foul anyway, because it would have been a foul
course
ball
not.
right away.
No, that's
the home plate umpire standing right there. I think that if anybody would have noticed that the ball hit the batter after the batter hit the ball, it would be the guy who's standing next to him.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. So, the poor Pirates, right? This was an Orioles-esque collapse. How you get handed this gift of 3 extra runs for free.
Well, that's exactly why I would not say poor Pirates. They allowed it to happen. They gave that up.
feel bad for him, man.
They said, nope, you can have it back. No, thank you.
They almost swept the first place Mets, and then they
didn't.
Yep. Sad state of
The
affairs.
Mets seem like a team that's going to win their division and then be unceremoniously bounced from the playoffs
Oh, absolutely.
by a far superior team.
I don't care how ugly it is for the Mets to win the division. If they win the division, I am going to make sure that you never forget it, because I predicted it, and y'all mocked me openly on this podcast.
No, I'm pretty sure I picked the Mets also.
Well,
to win.
Evan openly
Evan-
mocked
Evan did.
one of
Hugh
us.
Jackson and I will check the tape.
But I'm
I
fairly
picked the
certain
Braves.
I picked
Both
the
of
Mets
you
to
picked
win.
the Mets.
Yes. So, Evan, I will be coming for you if the Mets win the AL or NL East. Just letting you know. Don't care if they're 500 doing it. I'm coming for you.
Which isn't out of the question. They're only 6 games
I
above
still
500.
think I'm not wrong about the Mets, though. They
Well,
seem
in
to be
this particular
lacking
case, both can be
substance.
right. They can win it
But
and get bounced, but they still won it.
I didn't say anything about them going far in the playoffs.
Yeah,
I
no.
said they're going to win
Me
the
neither.
NL East. So, moving on to some unfortunate news from this weekend. There was a shooting outside of Nats Park that
Yep.
caused the game to be suspended in the 6th inning. Was it 6th inning?
Yeah.
And
I think so.
so the gunshots happened just outside the gate down the third base line. So for all anybody knew, the shooting was coming from inside the stadium, which, needless to say, caused a significant panic for the crowd. Even if they knew it was outside the stadium, it's still pretty terrifying knowing the gunshots are going off that close by. So the game was suspended. The fans were ushered out of the stadium through the center and right field gates. And a lot of the fans were justifiably freaking out. We know that the Fernando Tatis went down the third base line and opened the gate to the field to allow, at the time, seemingly he was trying to help some of the Padres' teammates' family members
Right, yeah.
get down to the field. And so, of
But
course,
I think a few other people came in too, but the Padres opened up their dugout to
yeah, and so
whoever
the
was in that
fans
area.
the fans ushered onto the field as well.
Yeah.
And so he and Will Myers and Manny Machado were kind of helping guide fans into the dugout to take cover.
A couple of cases they were actually carrying
Yeah,
fans
and
down there.
trying
yeah.
to seek safety there, and
Yep.
there were fans in the Nats dugout as well.
Yep.
It was a scary scene and an unfortunate scene, but it was a moment for people to kind of come together a little bit too, because just to see some of the humanity of these players that they didn't have any reason to prioritize fans of the other team, perfect strangers, but in that moment they thought of others and they thought of taking care of as many people as possible when these guys are multimillionaires. They've got families of their own to worry about, and yet they put others before them in that moment. It showed a lot of character from, particularly in this case, the highlighted players were Machado and Tatis and Myers, but anybody else that helped really stepped up, and so shout out to them. But it's also just unfortunate that this had to happen, because this is the type of crap that happens around here. In fact, I'm honestly surprised that this is the first time that we've seen a game halted due to gunfire, because
Yeah,
this is something that happens in this country all the time.
I don't know all the details of the actual incident. I know that a woman who I guess had been attending the game was shot outside the stadium, and she's expected to be okay.
Cover, yeah.
I don't know the condition or the situation of the other two people who were injured, but probably the saddest part of this whole thing was I saw an interview this morning of an 8-year-old girl who was at the game, and she almost had like this "it was no big deal" sort of attitude, because she was like, "Oh, this is my second shooting," so I sort of knew what to do. I'm like, how are we letting, as a society, how are we allowing a child to experience this multiple times. She's not even double digits yet. She's not even 10 years old yet. Like, how are we allowing kids to be so desensitized to being in this situation, being near this situation? That's inexcusable.
I mean, you only need to look, right down South Capitol Street to the big 200-year-old stone building and ask, why is this happening? Why this? Why that? Why that? I mean, that's where the issue is, and I mean, that's all there really is to say. Just walk down South Capitol Street from the site of this incident, and there's the answer to all of your questions you just asked.
Yeah, I'm not really in the mood to tiptoe around people's feelings about their guns or anything like that. I mean, we can have a conversation about this and also just be 100% straight up. This is unacceptable, and this is like, as long as stuff like this happens,
keeps being accepted.
Yes, that's the problem.
Yep.
And the thing is, everybody wants to talk about this or that or make excuses or try to deflect or talk about something else, but as long as stuff like this is happening, the conversation is not going to stop. So you can either get on board or you're going to have to just continue to be subjected to news like this, because nobody likes to hear about things like this. This is not good news. Hearing about shootings and people being killed unnecessarily because of crazy people with guns, it's not going away. And now it has permeated the sports world because it involved the sports team. So it's going to keep popping up everywhere you go.
It postponed a sporting event.
Yes. So if you don't want to hear about it, then maybe you should try to help fix it, because
Doing the same thing over and over again is not working.
No.
And by the same thing, I mean nothing.
yes, to sit there and just say, what else
Eventually, you
could
got
we
to do something different.
Just the Onion can
What
tweak
else can
the
we do?
story
Well, let's
again.
try doing something. Let's try doing a damn thing.
Yeah, that's really the most frustrating part, is that there's absolutely nothing being done. It's just like, yep, this is just the way it is. This is the I hate Mondays thing, where it's just like, this is part of life. Can't do anything about it. It's a damn shame. Well, no, it's not a part of life, and it's not a damn shame. You can do something to fix this. You just don't want to. So that is my rant about that. I will get off my soapbox and we will move to the NFL.
Oh, there's one other thing here from Major League Baseball.
Another
So
big-
Evan wanted us to
Oh,
go
right,
through
yeah,
this
sorry,
list
sorry,
of
yeah, you're
potential rule changes
A late edition, yes.
that the MLB is considering, and just we'll give it a love it, like it, don't like it, hate it, or neutral on each one.
We'll see where we are. So I'll read them off. So the first one involves the extra innings rule that we've discussed a lot on this show since it became a thing in 2020 for the shortened season. So the runner on second to begin extra innings, every half inning after the ninth. So that's just kind of repeating the same thing.
Yeah.
Every half inning after the ninth begins with a runner on second base with nobody out.
Again.
I like it. I don't necessarily love it. Like I'm okay if we get rid of it, but I do like it. I'd be okay if we moved it later. Like if it was
where
after
I'm
the
kind of
12th
at
or the
too, yeah.
13th inning, maybe. I'd be great with that. I do like the fact that it does shorten some of those like marathon games where the players are playing into 4 and 5 o'clock hour the next
16,
day.
17
That's a
inning
little
games,
bit
yeah.
much when they have to play again the next afternoon.
There's a day game the next day. There's
God.
Whenever there's an 18-inning game, there's always a day game the next day.
It does seem to be
Yes,
that
indeed.
way.
So my feeling is that typically extra inning games before this rule was implemented, the vast majority were resolved in an inning or two. Typically the 10th inning is when an extra inning game ends. But obviously there are exceptions that stretch on and on and on to the night. So I'm kind of in the same boat where I think it would be better if they started that rule like in the 12th. So give them 2 extra innings to play straight up baseball. If they can't figure it out by then, throw on the gimmick. That's kind of where I am.
Yeah.
I do think the 10th is a little early just because it does resolve itself usually in 1 inning. It usually doesn't need to be that way, but on the instances it do, let's tighten it up, fellas.
It
Let's
also
tighten
can
up.
be a little bit frustrating from a fantasy baseball standpoint. And obviously, fantasy is not the most important thing, but like with the NFL,
Who says
that?
that?
If you're gonna try and make this sport, interesting to a lot of people, fantasy can be a tool that's used for that. And so, the more relevant relief pitchers that you might have on your team, they might be used in that 10th inning. And we've seen that a number of times in our league where a player ends up getting hit with the loss, even though they gave up a hit and no earned runs.
Or they didn't even give up a
They
hit.
just gave up that runner on second and they ended up losing the game. So that can be a little bit frustrating. Obviously, not the most important part of it from the baseball perspective, but from a fan perspective and engagement and people who are a little bit more casual fans, that is, I think, worth considering.
Yeah, the purpose of the rule is to get games over with more quickly. I think that it's a little bit redundant when you consider the fact that they usually do. So this will be specific. I think this will be better specifically for the games where, okay, you guys are clearly not wrapping it up, so we're gonna grease the wheels a little bit.
Agreed.
Yeah. So with me on this, over the past 12 months, I was squarely in the hated column. And then as soon as I saw an actual game end this way on the first night of the season, I switched all the way over to love it. We're not in regulation anymore. We're in overtime. We need to try to figure out a solution to break this tie. So I like it because, when the game goes to extras, we're not going to be here till Christmas tonight. So like the last time I attended an Orioles game in person that they actually played and wasn't rained out, the Orioles were here in Atlanta. It was a Friday night, and the Orioles had the lead in the ninth inning. Then they scored 4 more runs, and then they gave up 6 runs in the ninth inning. So we go to extras, tied at I think 7, and then nothing happened from the 10th to the 15th inning. We're just sitting there for 2 hours, just waiting. The fireworks got canceled, so I like it because I know we're going to have a result soon, rather than we just play forever until somebody scores or somebody dies. Like let's just tighten it up, like you said.
Yep.
So
we're mostly on the same page there. So we'll move to the second part of the survey, which this is such a bizarre question to me. I don't even know how to answer it. Position players pitching.
So they want to make it so there are no restrictions, but what restrictions are there currently?
Well, I don't think there are.
It has to be like a 6-run game.
Oh, so this would add restrictions to it.
This would take them away.
Oh, okay. So there are restrictions, and it has to be a 6-run game?
Yeah, it's got to be, the game's got to be out of hand. I think 6 or 7 runs, or it has to be like late in extra innings or something.
I don't see why a team would put a position player in when the game isn't kind of already out of hand and you know that you're not going to win.
Exactly. Or you're up by 5.
Because I don't really see where that would be. It sort of seems like the restrictions are fixing a problem that shouldn't really be there. And if there was a reason to do it, it's probably a legitimate reason. So if you want to put your position player in earlier for some weird reason, why not? I don't care. Go for it.
This seems like again, I don't know.
How often is a team actually going to put a position player out there when the game is not out of hand?
I just I don't know how to answer it because I just didn't even consider this an issue. I just figured let them go out there and do what they do. But so I guess if you say in terms of this rule, I guess I would say I love it because I'm all for players being able to do whatever the hell they want as far as what position they play.
It also opens up the possibility of having a player who's really good in the field, be able to come in as a relief pitcher. Maybe they aren't, maybe they can't start like Shohei Ohtani, but they've still got what it takes to come in a relief role and pitch an inning or two. You have to be judicious about how you use that because now you lose them in the field for the rest of the game once you take them out as a pitcher. But
just put them back in the field.
You just move them back out in the outfield.
I guess that's true. Yeah, I guess you could still do that. Yeah. So it opens up the possibility of more, two-way players and players being able to do more things on the field, which I think is exciting.
Yeah.
Not too shabby.
Eric, I think you might have described this as a solution in search of a problem. Like there's nothing here.
Yeah, this seems just not even really a thought. So my thought was that when I saw this was that they were going to stop allowing position players to pitch altogether. When I saw this pop up, I was like, why the hell would they do that? That would be dumb. So next one is universal designated hitter. We've discussed this a little bit on the pod before, but you guys know how I feel. I'm all for the designated hitter in both leagues. I think that I hate the fact that teams they could get out of jail free card when they're giving up a rally. And they can sit there, runners on second and third with 1 out. Let's walk the 8 hitters so we can get the pitcher to bounce into a double play or strike out. It infuriates me. I
also love when that happens and then they end up giving a hit up to the pitcher.
Which happens barely.
I feel like it happens more often when they walk the 8 hitter than when they just pitch to both of them.
I've watched.
Maybe that's not
games
true.
where
That
it's
might
just
not be backed up by statistical data, but it feels like that happens. I'm purely neutral on this.
I just
What?
I'm fine if they introduce the universal designated hitter. I'm fine if they keep it separate with the 2 leagues. I am not going to complain one way or the other.
Sorry, it is pouring outside here.
We're not expecting any rain until the weekend, at least here.
Yeah. Pitchers hitting is stupid. We've known it's stupid for about 70 years or so. But baseball being baseball is...
Shohei Ohtani.
Okay, I'm sorry. There's one guy in the history of baseball who's been a good pitcher and a good hitter.
Yeah, but he's happening now, and so there could be more that are going to be coming in the coming, months and years.
That being said, Shohei Ohtani only gets to flex both of his abilities because he can DH when he's not pitching.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, anyway, pitcher sitting is stupid. Get rid of it. I know we took a bit of a... Me and the other pitchers shouldn't hit crew took a bit of
he has played some outfield.
A shot last week when the Padres relief pitcher who was 0 for 1 in his entire career at the plate hits a grand slam off of Max Scherzer.
That was amazing, and we would not get that if we had universal DH.
An isolated incident.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like one amazing play every once in a blue moon. I don't think
it's even more special because it's so rare.
Because I don't think it makes up for the slog of watching pitchers haplessly strike out. It's like Bartolo Colon hit that one home run after years of just flailing away and being an automatic out, and I'm just like,
to me, that makes it worth enough that I'm purely neutral on this.
Okay, well, as a grow the game ambassador of baseball, I don't think it's good for the game to have just non-professional hitters being required to hit.
That's probably fair.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at with that one.
To borrow a phrase, it's a television show, and it's supposed to be entertaining. And watching everybody just flail and be fat and uncoordinated.
I find that entertaining.
That's not good baseball. So, like, pitchers have a lower batting average as hitters than hitters do against Jacob deGrom this year. So, that's if every guy that comes to plate is just getting mown down, like it's
who doesn't look silly at the plate against Jacob deGrom?
That's the point, is that pitchers can't even reach the level of normal hitters against the best pitcher in the world, who apparently never pitches according to Evan because he's missed a couple starts. Every time he starts, he has to go back on the injured list.
It does seem like that's been the case this year.
He hasn't missed that many starts.
I just feel like anti-DH people, we can't even agree to disagree. We just agree that they're wrong and don't know what they're talking about. This is unbelievable.
Okay,
what's the next one?
I'll move to something everyone's passionate about the DH. I've said it enough. So
I'm passionate about this one too.
Yeah, I'm very passionate against this one. Playoff format changes. 8 teams in total from each league make the postseason, including division winners, second-place division teams, and then 2 wild cards.
So basically what they did last year during the shortened season.
Hell no.
I was fine with it for the shortened season because it was only 60 games and the teams didn't get a chance to really differentiate themselves the way they normally would over the entire course of 162 games. But for a full 162 games, no.
This is ass.
No.
This is absolute ass.
I'm barely okay with the 5 teams making it in. I'm okay. The one game playoff has its moments. I do enjoy that enough that I'm okay with that. I don't need any more than 5 teams per league. So yeah, I hate this idea.
Yeah, I absolutely hate this as well. And I think this is basketball's problem, is that there's so many regular season games, but then there's so many playoff teams. Like, any one regular season game doesn't have anything on the line because all you have to do is be, kind of good, a little bit good, or not terrible in the case of the Eastern Conference in the NBA to make the playoffs.
Even in the Eastern Conference, you can be kind of terrible and make it sometimes.
Oh, right. Well, now the NBA expanded the playoffs to 10 teams per conference.
Yeah, but
don't be the absolute
I'm okay with
worst.
the way the NBA did that. I don't like the fact that there were 8 to begin with, but the way that they've expanded it, because it's not really an expansion, I'm fine with it. It's really not
it's like
that
technically
much
the
difference.
play-in teams that lose are not playoff teams.
Right.
Like that's the
Like if anything, this kind of makes it better because like the 7 and 8 teams shouldn't really be playoff teams anyway, and now there's a chance they won't be.
Yeah, like Golden State was the 8th seed and they didn't make the actual tournament because they lost to the Lakers and they lost to the Grizzlies. So
Well, yeah. I mean, we all agree that this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I want to look. Corey, your Yankees, would they be in the playoffs if there were 8? I think just barely.
Looking at the wild card.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, they'd be out.
They'd be out.
Well, they're tied with Cleveland, so they would have to have some sort of one-game playoff to determine who gets the 8th seed.
We've also played 2 more games
waxed.
than them, so that'll fix itself at some point.
But anyway,
one way or the other.
Yeah. I would be happy if baseball expanded the playoffs, like if they expanded to 6 per league, if the leagues expanded to 16 teams each. Basically, what
If they
the
did
NFL
that,
had.
I'd be okay with it. If they expanded to another team in each league and they made 6 teams in each league make the playoffs, I could live with that.
Yeah, so there's 2 wild card games.
I've had enough. I've had enough. 5 is enough for me. I don't need any more. I think that, like comparing it to the NBA, basketball, yeah, sure, the 8 seed, we agree, probably has no business making the playoffs. And they are quickly dismissed from the playoffs because the 1 seed beats the hell out of them in 4 or 5 games just about every time.
Yep.
So at the very least, that team gets sent packing. In baseball, especially if you play a 5-game series, or didn't they play like 3-game series or something like that in the first round?
Yeah, they played 3.
A 3-game set between a team that maybe went 78 and 84 going up against a 100-win team. That 78-win team can win a 3-game set against the best team in the league. And now you've got a situation where you've got sub-500 teams advancing into the postseason, and that would not be uncommon. Yeah. Like, there's no unceremoniously bouncing a Major League Baseball team because it's baseball. Things happen. It's a high-variance sport. That's why you play 162 games to determine who's worthy of actually winning a pennant. You don't sit there and say, oh, well, half the teams qualify because why not? This isn't March Madness. This isn't some gimmicky tournament that the NCAA puts on because they want to make a bunch of money. This is actually supposed to have a little bit of integrity, right? Like, come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the wildcard game does add integrity to the regular season. Like, you have to beat the other teams in your division, otherwise your whole season could come down to, the one game.
So
just a bad bounce or some wind.
But I
or
also
something.
see Eric's point if you were to add a 6th team, because like for me, the surface thought is, well, if we add a team in each league, then we're at the same number as the NFL, and we loved the 6-team playoff in the NFL. But it's a little bit different when you've got 4 divisions versus 3 in Major League Baseball, and I would imagine they'd probably expand to 4. And so at that point, maybe the 6th makes more sense. But under the current format of 3 divisions, if you add a 6th team, then now one of those division winners has to play that 1-game playoff against one of the wild cards, and that doesn't seem quite right.
I think if baseball expands to 32, they would have to realign the divisions and a whole bunch of stuff. That's sort of getting away from the point of our discussion, but I think 16.
In fact, if they were to do that, I would. In some ways, for baseball, I think I would almost prefer them to do like 2 divisions of 8 in each league rather than 4 divisions of 4.
So go back to like the pre-wild
basically
card
sort
era.
of what it was like in the pre-wild card era almost. So then you have you basically have 4 wild card teams, or maybe the winners, the second place, and then 2 wild cards, and the second place and 2 wild cards, they play each other in those 1-game playoffs or whatever, to determine who's going to play against the division winners in the ALDS and the NLDS.
Yeah, I think we're overthinking a little bit. Just the fact that we all agree.
Yeah, but that's the point of thinking about a poll like this. Is you overthink it to make sure you consider all possibilities. But the bottom line is we all hate the 8-team playoff idea.
So last one.
Well, on this podcast, we could find a way to argue for a half hour about something we all agree on.
Yeah, which is kind of what we just did. So suspended games. This one doesn't really. Again, I don't really have much of a feeling about it, but when weather forces a game to be cut short before it is official, it will be continued at a later date rather than start from scratch. I think that's a good idea. I mean,
I do too.
I feel like if I put up stats in the first 3 innings of a game, I did it.
Yeah.
Like,
especially if I hit a home run. I don't want to lose that home run.
Yeah.
Like what if late in the season I'm like fighting to get to 50 home runs on the year, and I had one in a game that was, shortened or suspended because of rain early in a game before it became official, but then we restarted, I lost that home run, and now I've finished with 49. I'd be a little bit annoyed.
Or even just from a non-selfish standpoint, we were up 6-0. We want to win. I don't want to have my potential win erased.
Yeah.
No, One thing that almost happened was somebody hit a milestone home run in one of these games that ended up getting suspended, and like they passed the milestone later, but like the makeup game was after they passed the milestone. So like the official date of the first home run would be before, or I guess after the date of the second one or something. It was very strange.
Right.
Yeah, because the date of the game is retroactive to the.
Yeah. This is one where like I don't know if John Boy created this poll or if if Major League Baseball created or somebody else did and John Boy just shared it. Regardless, I'm a little bit disappointed with the levels because I'm just looking at this like Aziz Ansari in that stand-up where it's like they got the like it and the love it, but where's the gotta have it?
Yeah.
Because this one I would put gotta have it. I think that this is a great idea.
I agree, it's a great idea. It's just it's such a dry thing. It's not really exciting, but I think it's absolutely right that they should.
Thing. We're talking about rain.
Yeah. Well, we could be talking about other things that cause games to be suspended, which we just did, and that was unfortunate too. So,
yes.
So that does it for our baseball discussion, I think, unless somebody wants to sneak another one in there, which this one wasn't really snuck in there. I knew it was there. I just kind of was moving ahead of myself.
John Means is supposed to return from the injured list tomorrow against the Rays. The Orioles lead 2-0 down in Tampa right now.
Excellent. So we'll move to the NFL. We'll start off with more COVID crap because this is life in the pandemic world. So Michael Irvin is upset that the Cowboys are still below the 85% vaccination threshold needed to loosen restrictions as camp opens this week. He actually came up with a pretty good way of thinking about it that we've kind of talked about a little bit, but it's nice to see an actual media person and former players say it. If you're not one of the teams quote, at the threshold, are you really thinking about winning a championship? Because this is beyond your personal beliefs, whatever hokey crap you might believe about vaccinations and all this other things. The bottom line is the world ain't with you on that one, Chief. So I hate to tell you this, but if you're not doing it and you get yourself in trouble because you get sick or you're near somebody and we can't trust that you're healthy, well, you're screwing up your team's chances of winning. If you can't at least connect with that, I don't know what to tell you at all.
Yeah, like I don't look at the Cowboys as a team that is legitimately vying for a championship, but every team should be going into training camp thinking that way and wanting to vie for one, and I'm with them 100%. If you're not at the threshold where you can lose some restrictions and be able to practice in full and travel with your full contingent, one of the things is if you're below that threshold, you can only travel with 100 members of your team personnel for games. And if you're at or above the threshold, you can travel with 140. So like that's a pretty significant difference of the support cast for your team that either can or cannot go with you and be at your road games with you. So, on one hand, at least the Cowboys are not the football team or the Colts, which are both under 50%. But they're
what
also
are they waiting on?
I couldn't tell you. I've seen two different numbers, 13 or 10 teams that are at or above 85% where they can start to loosen those restrictions. The highest four teams right now are Pittsburgh, Miami, Carolina, and Denver. In fact, I think Carolina is like flirting with 100% vaccination rate. They're not quite there, but I don't think they're too far away. But
even with Sam Darnold being a weirdo about it,
right? Yeah, so he's probably one of the only ones. So I have seen that there's an effort by some teams to try and identify who is or isn't vaccinated on their teams. Maybe not publicly, but at least to know for themselves, so they can figure out what they can do and maybe try and give them the resources they need. I don't know what resources
do you need?
I don't know what resources you're going to come up with that are going to convince somebody who hasn't been convinced at this point. But
the only resource somebody needs is to get hit upside the head with a shovel, right? That's the last remaining resource. I'm done with all the all the tiptoeing around. Well, maybe they need some resources and some education.
The problem
No,
is, Evan, if you give them a
idiot.
concussion,
Get the shot and
giving them
move
a
on.
vaccination is not going to help them get on the field.
Yeah, well, we'll keep
Oh.
other people from getting COVID. So
That's
there's
true.
that. I'm gonna hog
Jeez.
tie them down while they're snoozing from.
Good God.
Yeah, not great, not great at all. So I'm gonna need to borrow your
worked
computer
up.
here, Corey. So another sad story involving Richard Sherman. We know about what happened last week, I guess, domestic violence issue where he was seemingly intoxicated and furious with his father-in-law, and video footage, from the Ring.com thing that they had set up or whatever,
Yeah.
showing him trying to basically bust through the front door. He also got picked up for a DUI in a hit-and-run situation where he had a single vehicle accident and then left the scene without reporting
Yeah.
it. So he's in a little bit of legal trouble. It's unfortunate because we've mostly been pro Richard Sherman on this podcast. We liked him, bright guy, obviously a terrific player. And this is sad to see. He certainly deserves to be held accountable for his behavior.
Oh, yeah.
And that's probably going to involve, I'm not going to say jail time. I'm not a lawyer, and he's got a lot of money, and I'm sure he's got resources to get himself in some type of better situation legally. But beyond that, he seems like a guy who needs some help. I mean, this is anger. This was seemingly, apparently he had suicidal thoughts, and he was threatening to kill himself or something like that.
I mean, you typically don't get that level of drunk without something that is like driving you to drown your sorrow, shall we say.
Sure.
So not to excuse his actions,
Not at all.
but something was going on there that led to this, and hopefully whatever that was, he can get the help he needs to move through that.
Yeah, you can both empathize with somebody who's clearly in pain or struggling while also fully wanting him to be held accountable for
Yes.
this behavior that seriously negatively affects others around him. I mean,
Yes.
that does not excuse harming or threatening people or scaring the hell out of your wife by acting like a madman. Like, at that point, yes, you've got some demons that you've got to work out, and I want you to get all the help for your own sake. But you also need to do it because you're terrorizing people, and you should not be let off the hook for that. That's something that you've got to manage.
So he's been charged with 5 misdemeanors. Each one carries, I think 3 of them carry a maximum penalty of like up to 90 days in prison or in jail, and then the other 2 are like a maximum of 1 year. He says he's deeply remorseful for his actions, but he pled not guilty to all 5 charges. So I'm having a little bit of trouble, marrying those two, because he clearly recognized like he acted inappropriately, but so I don't really know legally what that all is. So I'm gonna leave that alone.
I wouldn't try to read into somebody's legal strategy,
Right,
and
right,
how they
exactly,
actually feel.
exactly.
He's got his lawyer telling him what to do.
Right. So he did appear in court with his wife Ashley the other day. And the next court appearance will be for a pretrial hearing on August 13th. He's not being held, but that's on the condition that he avoid contact with his father-in-law, whose home he was at when he was arrested early Wednesday morning.
Anything? Evan?
I mean, not really. I mean, what he did was terrible and needs to be held accountable. And then, for the mental health side of it, I mean, I've sort of been down this road a little bit, and you got to get help when you need help to prevent something horrible from happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
So hopefully that happens. So we'll move on to some other news. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are stopping by the White House this Tuesday to celebrate their Super Bowl victory in Super Bowl 55. Some other news came out regarding Tom Brady, and we knew that he had knee surgery this offseason. He had mentioned that was going to be a thing for him shortly after the Super Bowl, but we didn't really understand the severity of whatever injury or ailment he had, which has been reported to be now a torn MCL, which is a pretty serious injury. Like that's no joke. Normally people aren't playing on torn MCLs. Normally they need to go under the knife and get that fixed, and at times it can end seasons. So a little bit of a surprise there, and on one hand, kind of badass that he played through a torn MCL.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, why is this the first time we're hearing about it? The NFL has pretty strict injury rules when it comes to reporting players' injuries, and regardless of whether or not they play or
take reps in practice,
they have to report any type of injury that could potentially limit their practice availability and, most importantly, their game availability on Sundays.
And they have in the rule book that this is especially true of key players, which the quarterback is the key player.
Yeah, he's the most important player on the field. Yeah, so I would expect, unless this story has no teeth and there's actually no real proof that Brady had a torn MCL, which, of course, there's proof. He had surgery on his knee. So the doctor's going to be able to say, what did I do to his knee? I repaired his MCL because it was torn.
Well, and when he was asked about it this past June during minicamp, he said it had been bothering him since April of 2020, which would indicate that this has been a long-stemming injury that should have been on the injury report every week of last season.
Yeah, and the thing is, now in April of 2020, when Brady was supposedly first dealing with this, he might not have known he had a torn MCL.
Sure.
But at some point when you're in the building with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and he says, my knee's kind of sore,
they're going to take you and do an MRI.
Yeah, or at least do some testing. And then when they do the testing, they say, gee, you might have a torn MCL. Then they're going to give you an MRI, and they're going to say, oh, crap, he's got a torn MCL. And so either they did that and just said, whatever, and just kept it secret.
Or there's some very serious issues with their medical staff.
Yeah, or their medical staff's got real problems. Either way, it seems like the Bucs probably covered this injury up, which, I've never...
I mean, covered it up is being kind. They blatantly flouted the league rule.
Yes.
And
this
is there is precedent for punishment from the league for this. So back in 2008, when the Jets hid an injury for a significant part of the season to Brett Favre, they were fined $125,000 for it. Then just 2 years ago, in 2019, the Steelers had 1 week, just 1 week, the week 2 practice report. They did not accurately list Ben Roethlisberger on their injury report. He was dealing with an elbow injury, but they called it a veteran rest day. And then Mason Rudolph, during an interview, spilled the beans and said that he had been dealing with an elbow injury. And that's what led the NFL to investigate and find that this was something that he'd been dealing with. And so for that one error, that 1 week, they fined the Steelers $75,000 and Mike Tomlin an additional $25,000. So that's $100,000 of fines for 1 week in 2019. You have to imagine that we could be talking about,
loss of draft picks.
We could be talking about $2 million here if you prorate that over the course of an entire season, 20 weeks from week 1 to the Super Bowl, and potentially loss of draft picks. Maybe that might be a little bit extreme, I think.
I feel like loss of draft picks should be reserved for teams that violate rules that give them a competitive edge, like cheating.
Right.
This
I don't think really gives you a competitive advantage.
No, it does not.
If anything, you might do this to try and avoid another team targeting your player's injury, which is it's not legal according to the rules, but it's understandable if that's the reason.
Yeah, and that's not exactly a good reason to have people know your injuries. Like, well, we got to know the injuries so we know where to hit them so they get hurt. Like that doesn't do it. Like the reason why specifically key players done, and the NFL doesn't want to admit this, is for gambling, because Tom Brady playing on a bum knee moves the line, and Adrian Peterson back in his heyday playing on a bum knee or not playing at all moves the line. And so if they're lying about what these guys are going to do, and then all of a sudden Sunday, I'm not playing, even though all week you said he was healthy, well, you're going to piss a lot of people off in Vegas, and frankly, Vegas pays a lot of bills in the NFL. So I think that's really where this stems from, but nevertheless, it's the rules. And there's precedent for fines, so I think they should be fined. I don't know what the fine schedule is. I don't know what's the adequate amount of punishment, but it seems pretty clear that either the MCL story is a serious exaggeration of what Tom was dealing with, or the Bucs lied about his knee injury, at which point he should be held accountable for it, regardless of how. I don't particularly care that much about this rule, but it is a rule, and I'm not really a rules guy, but this seems like no reason not to be truthful about this. So you get what you get. Rules
are rules, and when you don't make the rules, you don't break the rules. It's not hard. So just follow the rules, even if you think they're stupid. Go in the off season, try to change it maybe if you think it's that bad. But to do it, what'd you say, Cory? 20 weeks in a row. This isn't a whoopsie. So it's like, oh well, we forgot. You can't forget 20 times.
Yeah, it's pretty clear they knew, and they were just like, we'll leave it alone. We don't want to make a thing of it.
Yeah, it means you did this on purpose. And we know Mason Rudolph is a cotton-headed ninny muggins. We know that. But what the other thing that bothers me about this is how it adds to the mythology of Tom Brady. And I'm tired of that. Like, we know Tom Brady's great, and he's the greatest ever, and he's perfect, and he's married to Giselle, and all this kind of stuff. It's another thing that's so great about Tom Brady, really. Like, come on.
But Evan, he was 43 and had a torn MCL, and he won the Super Bowl. He was
in his home stadium.
He was Super Bowl MVP for the
again
5th time. Yeah, exactly. Again, if this is true, if Brady did play through a torn MCL, props, I guess. But teams should have not lied about it. Probably.
Yeah, that's why I think they should be docked draft picks, because one time you get punished, fine, but every week for a year? Come on. That it becomes blatant at that point.
Well, yeah, it definitely was blatant. So, again, I don't think that they're going to miss. I mean, what kind of draft are you? We're not talking first round.
I mean, they should be docked something like a 4th. I don't know.
Yeah, fine. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to miss a 4th anyway. So, one last little tidbit before we get going, unless you guys want to continue to wax poetic about Tom Brady's toughness.
We'll complain about the mythology.
Yes, all that good stuff. So, there will be an alternate Monday Night Football broadcast announced for 10 games of each of the next 3 seasons that will feature... Will they be for all of them or just like early on? Like Peyton and Eli Manning will host on ESPN2 from a remote location, joined by celebrities and current and former players.
So it's in I guess partnership with Omaha Productions, which Peyton Manning has started. I didn't even know that was a thing, but apparently he owns a production company called Omaha Productions.
Did he found Omaha Productions?
I guess. I think
it better be based in Omaha. That's all I have to say about that.
Essentially, they'll pick 10 of the Monday Night Football games each year for the next 3 years, and they'll do a simulcast on ESPN2 with Peyton and Eli Manning hosting, and then different celebrities and current and former players will join them. I don't know if they'll join them in person or if they'll also be remote, but I'll be interested to see what the format is going to look like. Like, are they going to be calling the game, like play-by-play color commentary sort of thing, or is this almost going to be like, you're joining them in their living room as they're watching a game, and you're just kind of like listening to them, shoot the breeze about the game the way that we would if we were watching together.
Yeah, ESPN2 had something that I think this might be like for basketball games, because they had a game on and they had the standard broadcast team with Mike Breen and Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. But then on ESPN2, they had like 4 other people who weren't present in any booth or anything like that, but they were commenting on the game sort of in their own way. They weren't calling the game. There was no play-by-play person in that crew. And it was Brian Windhurst and Rachel Nichols and 2 other former NBA players. I don't remember exactly who it was, but they were just kind of talking about the game. I think one of them was Jalen Rose, and they were just talking about what they were seeing. It was almost, I guess, supposed to be, I guess you could call it like the StatCast version of this, where they're trying to be a little bit more analytical and breaking down plays. And so maybe that's what Peyton and Eli and crew are going to do, or perhaps make it a more analytical and more entertaining thing if they've got celebrities in there yucking it up with them. So I think it could be cool, but I don't, like you said, Cory, I don't really know exactly how the format's going to go. I've just seen something that could be similar to that with the NBA.
I'm excited to see what it ends up being, though. If it's them sitting in, just like sitting in front of a TV, watching it and enjoying the game and talking about things, like, I don't know if like I'll necessarily tune in every week or for the entire game to that version of the broadcast, but I could see where it'd be kind of fun from time to time to listen to their thoughts on a game, and maybe like you flip over during commercials, or like when something happens you just want to hear their thoughts, or if the broadcast team just sucks, which it was okay this past year. So
Yeah,
It was okay.
I like
was
the
okay.
I like the Monday Night
it was
Football
an
broadcast.
improvement. It was
Improvement.
a big improvement.
That's an improvement is an understatement. Oh my God! Why didn't they have this option when we had Joe Tessitore, Booger McFarland, and Jason Witten?
Oh my God.
Right? Remember those three?
Right. I would have been all over this. For
2018 when we had the Mahomes versus the Lighten It Up Rams, and we had to listen to those guys call the game.
God,
That was like the best game.
that
of
made
the year.
such a good game.
Super Bowl
so
51 and a
bad.
half or whatever they were calling it. Yeah, it's just that
Yeah.
was
So
not great.
I'm kind of hoping it's sort of the second option where it's just the brothers just kind of chatting about whatever while the game's going on. So similar to our live show during the NFL draft. Like we're not calling the action, but we're watching along and talking about it.
Yeah, we're
I think
reacting
that'd be
to what
fun
we
to
see.
listen to.
Yep.
Yeah, reacting. There you go.
It's a reaction
that's-
video, so you can become YouTube famous. So
Yeah,
sounds like
I
a
think
good
that's
idea
cool.
though. I mean,
I just wish Cooper Manning was hosting it, right?
he needs to wear his money jacket like he was at Super Bowl Media Day a few years ago. That was great.
Yeah, like live from Bourbon Street, the three of them. These are from New Orleans. That would be great.
That would be quite a time. Invite Drew Brees, although he's got another gig he's got. So
He's also not related to them.
yeah, but he played in New Orleans, so
Yeah.
there's that. So that does it for our list of topics. Unless you guys have any late additions or any updates on current game action, Evan, maybe.
Nope, nothing.
Okay, so I presume the Orioles are still up 2-0 in their game going on right now.
Yep.
Any
The Nationals are up 10-0 on the Marlins. Goodness
Woof.
gracious. Gave up all of these runs.
Not my
I see
pitcher.
Juan Soto is in here a lot.
That tends to happen when the Nationals score runs because he's like their only good hitter. So
I believe the Marlins have a pitcher named David Hess who gave up some runs.
that's unfortunate for him.
Yeah. It's also common for him.
That's true too. So any shout outs for any of you fellas? Or
I'll shout out Naomi Osaka. She is the first Japanese and Haitian woman to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated's swimsuit edition. She got a little bit of unwarranted hate on Twitter today because people are like, oh, she comes out and talks about, my mental health issues are keeping me from talking to the press. And then she goes and does a photo shoot and this and that. She did the photo shoot last year, folks. Like most of these things that have been coming out over the past few weeks about her, she was doing these interviews and the photo shoots and things like that months ago, well before she started talking about her mental health issues and stopped talking to the press. So like it takes time for these things to actually put together and be put out to the public. So let's put things into a little bit of perspective. But congratulations to her. She is, she's an inspiration to an entire generation of young women, whether they play tennis or not. But she's also, one more person who, I think is trying to advocate for more awareness of mental health issues. And we as a society are not aware enough of the reality of what mental health issues look like, how they manifest in people, and how to handle whether you have them yourself or whether you know somebody who is dealing with them. We as a society generally don't really know how to handle that. So the more people who can be advocates for that, the better. And my hat's off to her for being willing to be one of those people.
To raise awareness and help break the stigma.
Yes.
I think that's a big deal. I don't have anybody to shout out.
okay.
I do. It's going to come to me as soon as we get done recording, but
All right,
I don't have anybody.
I have a more lighthearted shout out to the guy that when they were counting free throw time for Giannis was counting $100 bills to mark
I saw
the
someone
seconds.
on Twitter say, "Why does this guy want to be?"
Paul Money
I think
Jones
Paul
said
Money
that.
Jones,
Yeah, and I was thinking, I was like, "Damn, dude, that's some courage. You're on national TV," and I'm just like, "Hey, you came up with the interesting. I'm not gonna say good idea. I hope you got home safe. Hope you're well. Hope you didn't get robbed. probably leave the money home next time.
Yeah.
Just saying.
No, we have banks now, right? They will hold the money behind lock and key and armed guard.
But how will you go viral if the money's in the bank, Evan?
I mean, if you get enough money in the bank, you could probably go viral a bit more easily.
Well,
you might launch yourself up to space just because, for example.
That is a thing, but I think that requires a little more money than
Then
a handful of
$100
C notes. Yeah, I think you
I
need a
don't
little
think you
more
can
than
hold that much money in two hands.
Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah.
So, since Evan is not coming up with any shout-outs, I'll sing us home here. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. You can find us at wherever you get your podcasts, as usual. Feel free to email us as well. Give us some fan mail. We read off your questions or your comments every week that you send them, so you'll definitely get some shout-outs on the show, especially if you tell us who you are. If you're not somebody that we know personally, then please leave your name. And if you're not comfortable with that, then okay, we'll still read your comments anyway. You can email us at thesportsballers@gmail.com. You can also leave us a review on any of the sources where you get your podcast. We prefer 5-star reviews, but if you hate us, well, you can go ahead and be honest. We wouldn't like it, but go ahead and be honest. That's the purpose of this whole thing. So you can also follow us on Twitter at SportsBallers18, and you can follow us individually. Cory is at Cory Puffett. I am at Quagmire67, and Evan is at Evan_Ash13. So next week, we will probably be wrapping up the NBA Finals. Hopefully it won't be too stale, given the fact that the series could end tomorrow night. But nevertheless, we'll be discussing it, and I'll also do a little preview of the NBA Draft, which will be happening, I believe, next Friday. So we'll get into that, some more football news as training camps around the corner, and, of course, the weekly updates for our teams and other baseball, along with some Olympic shenanigans and everything else. So until then, we will see you later. Have a good one. Thank you for tuning in. This was episode 152 of the Sports Ballers Podcast. Take it easy.